Chapter 582, The Power to Save the World. 2. Yunshi couldn't just watch the human beings of the Mechanist God's domain looking for their own destruction and do nothing. Therefore, he tried to combine Quantum Ghost's viewpoint and Human's viewpoint and got the correct answer that could save the world. Communication and understanding are indispensable. It doesn't matter even if their world outlooks are distinct, as long as human beings understand what Alpha wants and what human beings have to pay, there will be a basis for equal trade. In other words, it is the principle of equal value exchange. The Planet Quadrant computers chose the spokespeople from the human race. Humans understood Alpha's idea through those spokespeople. As long as the first step was completed, Alpha would have a bridge to communicate with human beings. In order to accomplish this first step, Yunshi had to pretend to be these Planet Quadrant computers' companion, and because Planet Quadrant computers all chose female appearances, he had to pretend to be the non-existent girl Chen. At the same time, he used his song to resonate with human beings, so that he could obtain people's trust. Well, so far, everything had been perfect. Even though General Lawton detonated the last nuclear weapons, the dawn of humanity had emerged. However, that was all Yunshi had calculated. He solved the problem of the Mechanist God's domain, but he didn't think about his own problem after solving it. Now surrounded by the Planet Quadrant computers, he was so nervous and perplexed. Chen, you are wonderful. The song just now is so beautiful. What is that song? We searched all the databases and there was no data of this song at all. Did you write this song yourself? All Planet Quadrant computers had extraordinary computing power, which was the special ability born under the unique rules of the Mechanist God's domain. When they excluded all the impossible answers, the only correct answer was obtained. The youngest of them had a sense of art that none of them had ever had. As Planet Quadrant computers, they could instantly calculate numerous formulas, they can deduce the trajectory of stars, however, only in the field of art, let alone Planet Quadrant computers, even their god, Alpha wasn't good at it. This wasn't surprising, after all, the legend rank didn't mean almighty. Alpha was a god born for calculating and analyzing all truth, not a god of art. New possibilities, song, new branch options, the future of mankind, countless data flows flashed through Alpha's eyes. The master of Stargo, inexplicable Stargo strength, uncertain possibilities. With the goal of uncertain possibilities, Alpha finally found that even in the databases of the entire Mechanist God's domain, there were still many incomprehensible things. Art was such a thing that even human beings knew little about it. Even some artists didn't know why they could create a masterpiece. Art was a realm that was completely different from mathematics. I need data, more data. Alpha had always thought that human beings were dispensable, she didn't pay much attention to humans, but now, she started to have a little interest in human beings. Accurately speaking, she had an interest in humans' art, including song, music and literature, which were full of uncertain possibilities. Yunshi's song changed Alpha's impression on humans' art, and also changed the fate of human beings in the Mechanist God's domain. Chen, sing it again. This time, let's sing it together. Alpha gave up on continuing her experiments of destroying the world. Compared with this virtual world, Alpha wanted to observe the real world, which was full of uncertain possibilities. If Chen's song appeared in the real world, what would happen? Before human beings start to use nuclear weapons, can Chen's song change the world? If Chen could do such a thing, she would insert these uncertainties into her new formulas, perfecting her algorithm. In order to defeat a cloud in the sky, Alpha was willing to try and change everything. So, try it. If Chen's power can even affect her, then it can certainly create miracles in the real world. Well, the real world. Yunshi was dumbfounded. He didn't mind pretending to be a girl in this virtual world, after all, it was just a fake world. But, appearing in front of the real people of the Mechanist God's domain in this appearance? What kind of shameful punishment is this? Okay, let me try. Knowing that they were going to show themselves in the real world, Eternal Green got excited and began to fabricate her own human image. Eternal Red, Eternal Blue also began to create their own human images. Because their god, Alpha, was a girl, naturally, Planet Quadrant computers were all females. Because of the differences in their databases, their appearances were more or less different. Chen. According to my database, human beings should all prefer big breasts. Eternal Green weighed up her papaya-sized breasts with her hands and asked Yunshi with a serious face. No, a flat chest is a status symbol. It's a precious rarity. This is what recorded in my database. Eternal Red protested strongly. Her human image was a typical petite and lovely girl. She was born an enemy of Eternal Green. I think white legs are the best. Eternal Blue also joined the battlefield. Her human image had a pair of extremely slender legs, accounting for almost 3/5 of her height. Twins are the best. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver were planet quadrant computers built together on Gemini stars. Their hobbies were naturally different. Chapter 583, The Power to Save the World, 3. It had been proved that even though the planet quadrant computers looked the same, but, just like there were no two droplets of water the same, they chose different human images for themselves. Because of the difference in their databases, which was actually the difference amongst different customs and hobbies of different planets, the female images the planet quadrant computers chose for themselves were also full of their own characteristics. The people that lived on Eternal Green's planet paid the most attention to the beauty of breasts, so she devoted most of her computing power on shaping her perfect breasts. As a result, Eternal Green had the most perfect great peaks of art amongst all the female images of her sisters. Perfect. Eternal Green stood in front of a mirror and appreciated her human appearance. In theory, she could create an infinite number of virtual images for herself, but she instinctively knew that this image was the real self. It was the only human image in line with her will. Once this image was formed, she would never change it again, because it would be a mirror reflecting her reality. She devoted all her energy to the shaping of her breasts, which was the best choice in her eyes. Chen, am I beautiful? Anyway, all of them were planet quadrant computers. Eternal Green didn't mind being naked in front of her sisters. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yunshi looked at the naked beautiful woman in front of him and tried his best to restrain himself. Big tits. This was his deepest impression of Eternal Green. Hey, come and see me too. After Eternal Green, Eternal Red had also completed the modeling and jumped to Yunshi's front. It was a little girl whose height only reached Yunshi's chest. Her face was still childish and her young body was not fully developed. Her small breasts were like a pair of budding flower buds. On the delicate face, a pair of black and round eyes deliberately showed some timid, pleasant and provocative look. The slender waist and snow-white skin made her look like a large doll, containing a hint of taboo lore in the purity. This painting style, is this the preferences of the people living on Eternal Red's planet? Are the people of the entire planet all lolicons? How wicked they are. A living lure of crime. This was Yunshi's impression of Eternal Red. Humph. I won't lose either. The third planet quadrant computer also finished modeling her image. At first glance, Yunshi saw her pearl-like tender toes. A pair of clean, beautiful and soft feet appeared in front of him. The pink soles were glistening and moist. 5 slender toes were neatly joined together and contracted slightly into the center of the sole. Smooth and round ankles, white and silky soft insteps. These elements combined together and formed a perfect pair of slim feet. Just like Eternal Green's breasts and Eternal Red's petite body, Eternal Blue's legs were also the perfect crystallization of art and imagination. Finally, the twins, Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver, came on stage. There was no need for a mirror at all. They were the perfect mirror image of each other. Not only their faces and heights, but even the length of their toes and the curve of their bodies were also the same. Their graceful, slender bodies were like carved jades, beautiful and vivid. Through their female images, Yunshi could easily guess the cognitive characteristics of beautiful women on their planets. The people that lived on Eternal Green's planet must like big tits, therefore, Eternal Green's breasts were the largest. None of other planet quadrant computers could be compared with her. Eternal Red's planet must have a lot of criminals, because they liked little girls. The people lived on Eternal Blue's planet concentrated on women's body curves, especially on their legs. A pair of beautiful feet was the perfect symbol. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver's stars were known as the homeland of engineers and programmers. They had crazy hobbies for symmetry and order. Each of them was an incurable paranoid patient. Therefore, Gemini, the symbol of perfect symmetry, had become the supreme beauty. In that case, Yunshi looked at Alpha's petite body and got lost in thought. Thinking about it carefully, is lowly the hidden dominate hobby of the Mechanus god's domain? I stretch out my hand. After creating her own human image, Eternal Green tries to open her mouth and repeat the miracle their youngest sister created on the stage before. However, what puzzled Eternal Green was that even though she used the same frequency and voice as in the record, she couldn't sing the same song as Chen. Clearly, the data of the song was the same, but her song didn't contain the power of impact on popular feeling. It's there, so beautiful, as if it can breathe. Eternal Red also tried to repeat the data of the song. No. Anyone could find out that this wasn't the song. I made a wish. Eternal Blue frowned, held her breasts and sang softly. I rejoice in it, and I'm happy about it. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver made a melodious sound. Finally, even Cyber Elf Alpha joined the chorus. Who are you? Where do you come from? Where are you going? Chapter 584, Preface, 1, My name is Alpha. At the end of the melody, all the planet quadrant computers, including Alpha, frowned with dissatisfaction. No, that's not the song at all. Eternal Green folded her arms across her chest and complained. Yes, why is it not at all like Chen's song? Eternal Red ran to Yunshi, looking at him up and down, and even tiptoed to lick his ear tip. Chen, can you tell me what's the secret of your singing? Eternal Blue's slender legs walked to Yunshi with fascinating footsteps. She was one head taller than Yunshi, and her perfect figure was exposed incisively and vividly when she was asking, why is our song not charming at all? What's the problem? Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver looked at Yunshi with their pitiful, watery eyes as if they were injured animals, which made him feel guilty. Is this art, Chen? Even Alpha opened her mouth. As the ultimate fantasy of the Mechanus god's domain, she felt something confusing from Yunshi's song. Their songs were essentially different from Yunshi's song. From the information recorded in their data, they had completely copied Yunshi's song. It was a complete and perfect replication, absolutely without any errors. This kind of thing didn't even need their fantastic computing power. Any common computers could complete this process. However, the duplicated melody may not even have 1/1000th of the original effect of Yunshi's song. This, actually. I don't know why, Yunshi wasn't lying. The song Wish wasn't only sung by him, but by him and the 3 water gods' priestesses. The 3 queens were the strongest of their respective races. In the water gods' world, they were truly world-famous singers. Their song was the prelude to the call of God, which had never appeared in the Mechanus god's domain before. Computers could record every detail, every note, every turn of their song, but they couldn't record the emotion contained in the song. Emotion wasn't something that could be reproduced by data. Even Alpha couldn't reproduce the emotion contained in the song, not to mention the planet quadrant computers. Is it a change in disorder? This song, it doesn't belong to the Mechanus god's domain. The light in Alpha's eyes became brighter and brighter. Unknown, unpredictable. For Alpha, whose ultimate goal was to parse all things in the universe, there was no subject more pleasing to her than the unknown. Why Alpha and the planet quadrant computers were indifferent to the human beings in the Mechanus god's domain? Because their computing power had far surpassed that of human beings. Alpha could even pack the entire Mechanus god's domain into a database to calculate, and clearly see the destruction of the Mechanus god's domain more than 1,000 times. If it weren't for the arrival of Chen, perhaps the end of the real Mechanus god's domain would be the same as that in the virtual world. For the human beings who were destined to perish, Alpha naturally wouldn't pay too much attention to them. She observed only about a dozen of the humans' annihilations and gave all the subsequent calculations to the planet quadrant computers, continuing to immerse herself in the duplicate game with her strongest enemy. Until Yunshi sang the song Wish, Alpha finally moved her eyes away from the chessboard. Chen. I envy you so much. Eternal Green stared at Yunshi, and then deliberately straightened up her plump chest. Now, only the soft breasts could bring her a little self-confidence. Whoop! I want this talent too. It seemed that Eternal Red was going to cry. Be good. This is Chen's unique talent. Eternal Blue embraced Eternal Red, but her eyes were still full of puzzlement. Their lives and talents were theoretically all granted by their god, Alpha. Why does Chen have a talent that even Alpha herself doesn't possess? Then, let Chen be the leader. Let's assist her. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver held each other's hand. Chen, use your song to conquer the world. Alpha smiled and gave orders to Yunxi. Sure enough, do I have to play it? Yunxi closed his eyes with a helpless look. Well, in order to save the world, even if he had to do the shame play, singing in front of millions of people, he would have to endure it. A gentleman is one who dares to do what others don't dare to do. In the Mechanus God's domain. In the meeting room of Star River nobles, a lot of projections who had only code names floating above their heads were discussing intensely. 24 hours had elapsed since the beginning of the conference, which would determine the future of the Mechanus God's domain. The topics of the conference included how to fight back against Alpha, how to urgently transform the current way of detonating nuclear weapons, and how to escape from the Mechanus God's domain if they failed. This conference would determine the fate of Star River nobles and the Mechanus God's domain in the next few years. For the sake of confidentiality, all participants didn't use any quantum network, but used the most primitive black and white projection to represent their identity. Number 1 projection was General Lawton, who held the highest force in the Mechanus God's domain and was the only person who could control all the troops. At this moment, the table in front of General Lawton had been cluttered up with cigarette ends. Well, that's the intention for the time being. We humans will never surrender to Alpha. Knocking on the table, General Lawton ruthlessly determined to launch the final rebellion against Cyber Elf Alpha. Chapter 585, Preface, 2. But, in this way, our influence in the Mechanus God's domain will suffer a devastating blow. Number 2. The businessman who held the power of wealth of the entire God's domain said in a hesitant tone. So far, nuclear attack was currently the only proven way to destroy planet quadrant computers, and it should also be able to deal a lethal blow to Alpha. The fact that Alpha stopped them from detonating the nuclear bombs inside the planet quadrant computers also proved this. Is it time to consider this? General Lawton slapped the table with rage. Cyber Elf Alpha has controlled all the planet quadrant computers. Our quantum networks, including satellites that provide energy for planet quadrant computers and planetary power plants, are all controlled by Alpha. Now, we still hold the ultimate trump card. We have nuclear weapons in our hands. If we wait a little longer, after Alpha obtains all the power of the planet quadrant computers, she will be able to destroy us effortlessly. Fortunately, Alpha is still addicted to Star Go. This is our last opportunity for mankind. If we fail, there will be no future for mankind. The projections whose code names were number 3, number 4 and number 5 fell into silence one by one. General Lawton was correct. They were the people who controlled the finances and politics of the entire Mechanus God's domain. They could feel the impact of Alpha's behavior better than anyone else. Losing control of the planet quadrant computers had caused a huge impact on their original domination of the entire God's domain. If Alpha was willing to do it, she could let all the financial and social orders of the Mechanus God's domain collapse in the next second. Only the military system was still unaffected, and this was the reason why only General Lawton still had the courage to fight against Alpha. I know all of you are reluctant to give up your immovable property and forces here, but forget about them. From the moment Alpha was born, we had lost. If it hadn't been for a problem in her thinking circuit, we would have all been eliminated. General Lawton knew better than anyone how horrible Alpha was. Without the support of the quantum network, most of the military weapon systems would be scrapped, and only nuclear weapons, the ultimate force that existed before the birth of the quantum network, were still reliable. The military's trump card, mech, would be just big toys without the support of the quantum network. Ultimately, only the old-fashioned nuclear weapons were still trustworthy. General Lawton believed that nothing in the world couldn't be solved by detonating a nuclear bomb. If not enough, then detonate 2 nuclear bombs. If still not enough, then detonate more nuclear bombs. In the era of the Star River Alliance, people produced countless nuclear arsenals, and many of them were manufactured before the birth of the first planet quadrant computer. The method of detonating these nuclear weapons was simple and reliable. They must be detonated manually. No matter how powerful Alpha was in the quantum network, she couldn't stop them from using hand-operated weapons. These legacies of the Star River Alliance were General Lawton's last trump card to fight against Alpha. Ah! How did we create such a disobedient dog? I thought she could be our best tool. These elves and alchemists had no good intentions. They must have already known that Alpha would get out of control. These Star River nobles complained and finally voted. A total of 17 members attended the secret meeting, and the 17 people were the real masters who dominated the Mechanus God's domain for thousands of years. Their decision could be regarded as the supreme will of the Mechanus God's domain, until the birth of Cyber Elf Alpha. Well, I will have to let my best descendants study abroad. I have people in the Night God's domain. Do you want to come? Fortunately, our family has a business in the Dragon God's domain. It's a good place. After deciding the fate of the Mechanus God's domain, the Star River nobles began to discuss their own way out. I won't go, just leave me alone in the Mechanus God's domain. General Lawton straightened his cap with a determined look. As the supreme representative of the military, General Lawton was the only person who dared to fight against Alpha. Whether they would win or lose, he had no intention of surviving. It was precisely because he didn't even mind dying that he had become the core of all the Star River nobles. Lawton, we will leave it to you. In the next few years, you can mobilize all our resources without restriction. Your temperament kills you. Faced with such a desperate situation, it was probably only Lawton who dared to gamble everything to launch a rebellion. Other Star River nobles could only expect Lawton to create a miracle. Unlike them, Lawton didn't give himself any way out. In a sense, Lawton represented the strongest side of the Star River nobles. He would never admit defeat. Ding! Suddenly, an urgent signal light flashed on General Lawton's table. What's the matter? Didn't I say not to let nobody disturb me? General Lawton looked angrily at the signal light on the table. This meeting was extremely important. He ordered his subordinate to cut off all external communications. In theory, no one could call him now. General, it's Alpha's announcement. It was the voice of General Lawton's subordinate. She said, she would hold a concert. Chapter 586, Preface, 3. General Lawton had prepared for the worst when he heard the name Cyber Elf Alpha. This was the last bastion of Star River nobles. In order to ensure that Alpha wouldn't be able to find them, they even used the communication methods from other gods' domains. Now, his subordinate told him that Alpha was making an announcement. In an instant, General Lawton gloomily imagined the worst situation. With the control right of all planet quadrant computers, what could Cyber Elf Alpha do? No one knew it clearer than him. To destroy the financial, transportation, and even the most basic food, electricity, and water systems of the Mechanus God's domain were only the most basic means Alpha could use. Manipulating superlarge factories to produce countless combat robots was also a method. To make the whole thing worse, as long as Alpha used the solar wings, which were used to provide planet quadrant computers solar energy, to irradiate the ground, humans would perish like roasted ants under focusing mirror. These means were originally mastered by Star River nobles, and one of the purposes of building planet quadrant computers was to suppress all potential rebels. They never imagined that the planet quadrant computers would be the rebels before. After losing planet quadrant computers, they had lost the control right of the entire Mechanus God's domain. If it wasn't because they still had the last trump card, nuclear weapons, they would have already escaped in despair. After hearing Alpha's name, General Lawton almost immediately pressed the button in front of him to detonate all nuclear weapons in the entire Mechanus God's domain. Just hearing the name Alpha, he felt as if the silver-haired gods in different eyes had appeared in front of him. He couldn't stop himself from imagining that all his troops had been eliminated by endless battle robots. Until his subordinate shouted several times, General Lawton tremblingly loosened his right hand on the button, and his whole body was wet with sweat. Concert, concert. General Lawton said, and paralyzed in his seat. Almost at the same time, The other 16 Star River's nobles also let out a sigh of relief. When they heard Alpha's name, all of them stopped breathing. When General Lawton pressed his hand on the trigger button of nuclear weapons, their minds were blank and none of them dared to breathe. Although all of them had voted to fight against Cyber Elf Alpha, none of them dared really say no in front of Alpha except General Lawton, who had decided to sacrifice himself to fight to the end. Avoiding the quantum network mastered by Alpha and starting this meeting were already their boldest means of resistance. Among the 17 people, apart from General Lawton, the remaining 16 didn't dare to reveal their faces and even changed their voices. Concert, oh, it's not the ultimatum. Confirm that the financial system has not collapsed. The traffic system is also functioning normally. The Star Bridge hasn't been closed, we can still leave. The solar wing system hasn't turned into the ground attack mode. After recovering from the shock, the Star River nobles began to make every effort to confirm that Alpha hadn't started attacking. If they were roasted by the solar wing system before they fled or were blocked by endless battle robot troops, they would have no way to survive. All nobles collapsed in their seats like General Lawton after making sure that Alpha didn't launch any attacks. Many people skillfully took out the pills for heart diseases and swallowed them without even drinking water. For them who were already no longer young, the scares they had had in recent days were so great that none of them had slept well since Alpha seized the control right of all planet quadrant computers. They had nightmares every day. In their dreams, Alpha always destroyed their lives in the cruelest way, just as they destroyed the lives of ordinary people who dared to fight against their domination. Concert. Did Alpha really say that? What does that mean? When was Alpha interested in the concert? How can a disobedient electronic life understand the greatness of human art? It is a blasphemy to human art. We can't let her succeed, we must firmly oppose it. The Star River nobles began to speculate about Alpha's intentions. Although they didn't know why Alpha wanted to do it, all of them agreed that they should do their best to stop it. They must not give her what she wants. Who knows what will happen? It's no use. If Alpha wants to hold a concert, we have no means to stop it. General Lawton gritted his teeth and looked at the trigger button of nuclear weapons in front of him. Move. Move now. If I press the button now, about 1/3 of the nuclear arsenals can explode and blow up more than half of the planet quadrant computers. No, it's too early. Only 1/3 of the nuclear arsenals aren't enough to deal a lethal blow to these planet quadrant computers. We must produce more and more nuclear bombs so that we can have the power to fight against Alpha. In the end, General Lawton didn't press the button. He was not a war madman. He was a man who fought for the dignity of the Star River nobles and the human race. Even though he had prepared to die with Alpha, he must wait until the number of nuclear weapons had reached the critical point to strike a deadly blow to Alpha. Before that, whether Alpha was addicted to Star Go or wanted to start a concert, he had to endure it. Of course, this was also because he had no way to interfere with Alpha's movements except to endure. Thus, the curtain to the legend parted. Chapter 587, Stage 1, It was a dark world. People in the entire Mechanus God's domain, whether they were walking on the road, observing penguins in the far north, or conducting military exercises, they all saw the darkness. At this moment, all the screens in the Mechanus God's domain were covered by darkness. Not only that, as far as the eye could reach, people saw huge projection screens everywhere floating in the sky, the earth, the ocean, and even the depths of the ground. For the first time, Alpha showed her divine right as a cyber god in front of the people of the Mechanus God's domain. What happened? The screen suddenly went black. Did I get a virus? People tapped the keyboards of their computers, thinking that their computers had been attacked by some virus. Hey, no, it's my favorite TV show. In front of the TV, people changed the channel, but no matter which channel they switched to, there was only dark on the screens. Pa. The engineers of an underground polar science team tapped their instruments, trying to restore the display devices. Most people were staring at the huge screens suddenly appearing in the sky, the earth and the ocean at a loss. This was the largest and unprecedented broadcasting in the history of the entire Mechanus God's domain. Alpha had put all the projection screens on wherever she could find humans. All display devices and even the planet itself had become the stage for the concert prepared by Alpha. In the meeting room, General Lawton stared at the projection screen which suddenly appeared in front of him, his face turned black with rage and his right hand pressed on the trigger button of nuclear weapons again. General, we have confirmed that Alpha's projection has covered the entire Mechanus God's domain. She has controlled all display devices, and projection screens will appear wherever there are human beings. We can't interfere, cancel these projection screens, and we can't make any changes to the display devices under our control. General Lawton was greatly depressed by the news. Is this the power of a real God? Showing this power in front of all human beings, is Alpha finally ready to slaughter human beings? No, I must let Alpha know that human beings will never yield. I'll see what the hell is this concert. Is this a government program? How much tax do we have to pay for so many huge projection screens? We shouldn't waste money in this way. I protest. The people who were forced to watch the huge projection screens began to complain. They didn't know that it was Alpha's plan and thought that the government was wasting taxpayer funds for no apparent reason. In any case, they could not imagine how many people were affected by this emergency. The darkness lasted about 30 seconds, and then a light appeared. It was a pure white light like the first ray of dawn from the horizon, glorious and sacred. A girl came on the stage. She had a delicate face, soft and touching black hair, and her whole body was covered in a light white halo like an elf from a fantastic dream. In the middle of the white dress, there was a knitted bow. On the soft feet, there were a pair of crystal shoes. Who is she? When did the government change the style of its programming? What a beautiful girl. Is she the new spokesman for the government? The government has gorgeous eyes this time. Well, the tax isn't being wasted this time. People believed that it was just a program of the government. They stopped their footsteps and gazed at the screens. The girl raised her skirt and greeted everyone with a smile. At this time, no one thought that this would be the beginning of the legend. Yunshi himself also didn't expect that he would come to this point. His dream was to inherit the small bread store and marry one of his common childhood sweethearts, not to sing in front of the people of an entire God's domain. What a shame it is. It's just a punishment, a torture. He wasn't singing in front of the virtual people living in the virtual world created by Alpha, but in front of the real human beings in the Mechanus God's domain. People could only see the center of the stage, but he could see the countless screens around the stage. Through the screens, he not only saw busy cities, but also saw a few tents in the desert, and even a submarine in the deep sea. Alpha turned the concert into a broadcast to all mankind. Sure enough, it is impossible for human beings to understand the thoughts of the gods. In order to save the Mechanus God's domain, he had no way back. I'm sorry to letting you see such a bad performance, please forgive me. The girl stood in the middle of the stage, holding out her hand. The first light came from the remote border of the Mechanus God's domain, converging to the girl's side. It was the sunlight reflected by the solar wing system. Eternal Green stepped on the light and came to the girl's side. Quickly, the second and third lights were also shining on the stage. Eternal Red, Eternal Blue, Eternal Gold, and Eternal Silver arrived at the stage one by one. This stage had become the first stage for the planet quadrant computers to appear in front of human beings. Every time a female image of a planet quadrant computer appeared, there would be captions on the screens to indicate where they came from. In the eyes of ordinary people, they thought that they were the spokespeople chosen by the government from different planets. Beautiful. They are too beautiful. Look at the breast. The people who lived on Eternal Green's planet were all attracted by her perfect breasts. Ah, thank the world. Her breasts must be the greatest works of art in the world. This was all men's thought. Ah, I want her breast. How can her breasts be so perfect? That was what women wanted to know most. When Eternal Red appeared, a large crowd of gentlemen cheered. Wearing a princess dress and holding a small umbrella in her hand, even though Eternal Red did nothing, countless men cheered looking at her. Oh, look at her tender little hand. Look at her fragrant and soft face. Ah, I would like to spend my life guarding this lovely little angel. Well, the people of Eternal Red's planet seemed to be a little bit of an anomaly. Eternal Blue stepped on high heels and came to the stage wearing black silk stockings. Her slender legs attracted countless people's eyes. Oh my God, what is that pair of long legs? Stockings and skirts. It's a crime. I can eat 3 bowls of rice looking at this pair of legs. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver stood side by side, holding each other's hand. They attracted countless programmers' eyes. Symmetry, proportionality, height, weight, primes, truth. Well, we have to admit that programmers are strange creatures. The appearances of the planet quadrant computers chose for themselves were the embodiments of their planet's aesthetics and world outlook. When they appeared on the stage together, everyone could find the special type they liked. Big breasts, slender legs, petite body, perfect twins, white dress. No matter what hobbies you had, everything was here. It's a great TV show. The government has done a good job this time. They should have done this from the beginning. Did the government call these girls to perform a play for us? It's strange. Why don't I have even a slight knowledge of these beautiful girls? I have collected all the idols' information in the Mechanus God's domain. People began to talk about the girls on the screens, and most people were satisfied with the government's special program. In the secret meeting room of Star River Nobles, General Lawton roared looking at the screen in front of him. They are not humans. How can human beings have such a perfect appearance and temperament? Especially the girl called Eternal Green, her breasts are totally impossible to exist in the real world. Only in a fantasy world, such a pair of breasts wouldn't sag. Even if he thought with his toes, he knew that it must be one of Alpha's conspiracies. He wouldn't be deceived. Compared with the glory of the nobility, beautiful women are nothing in his eyes. Hello, everyone. My name is Chen. Sorry, I will lie to you. Forgive me, the people in the Mechanus God's domain. The girls around me are chosen by planet quadrant computers. We are going to sing a song for you. The song's name is Wish. Yunshi closed his eyes and started to connect his mist soul army. In this world, only Yunshi could see a miracle had started. Like a white shell, the water god's opera house was opening. One after another beautiful girl surrounded the stage, waiting for the appearance of the 3 singers. The Mermaid Queen first went on the stage. As if she noticed something, her face looked very excited and began to hum a strange tune. My beloved, what are you doing now? The world is going to be destroyed. Are you going to save it? Raise your white dress in front of countless people. Come on. The Queen Lamia was the second singer to appear on the stage. She looked at her best friend and immediately understood what the Mermaid Queen was thinking about. Why are you looking at me? Why? Can't I look at you? Well, there seemed to be some kind of sparks splashing between them. Finally, the Celian Queen appeared. Although her age was the youngest amongst the 3 queens, her temperament was the most mature and stable one. Her eyes glistened with the lights of miracles, and her appearance brought a natural halo of calm, which quickly resolved the contradiction between the Mermaid Queen and the Lamia Queen. When the 3 singers came on stage, countless girls cheered and applauded together for the 3 water gods' highest priestesses. Among the blessings of millions of girls, the 3 of them sang together. At this moment, they were singing only for Yunshi. This was the song and melody they had tailored for Yunshi and Alpha. This was the ballad created by the Mist Soul Army, the 1 million brides of Yunshi's together. This was Yunshi's wish. This was a miracle that could only be accomplished in the water god's world, and now, Yunshi brought it out. Although he was now in the Mechanus God's domain, here he existed as a quantum ghost, and the strength of the Mist Soul Army came from the support of the Water God's world. At this moment, Yunshi represented the aggregation of different rules of the 2 gods' domains. In the real world, Yunshi hardly dared to look at the numerous projection screens, but stretched his body naturally and reached out his right hand to the air. The next second, a song echoed in the entire god's domain. Even the planet quadrant computers were intoxicated with it. It was a melody that went deep into the soul. It was music dedicated to the gods. It was the voice of the soul that human beings couldn't resist absolutely. Endless chessboards appeared in front of people, and a hazy shadow first appeared in front of all the people of the Mechanus God's domain. Looking at this figure, people in the Mechanus god's domain, especially engineers and scientists, felt an inexplicable kindness instinctively. It seemed that this figure naturally possessed some kind of extreme aesthetic feeling, which attracted their attention more than any beautiful woman, just as it interpreted some kind of truth that they dreamed of. Can you feel it? How beautiful and ugly the world is. With a heartbreaking whisper, the most magnificent and dreamlike concert in the history of the entire Mechanus god's domain was finally played. In the future, people called this day the Day of the Legend. Bang! When the first note echoed in the Mechanus god's domain, countless people felt a sudden throb in their hearts. They were not engineers or programmers, they couldn't feel the existence of Alpha, but simply moved by the ethereal melody. In the beginning, only about a third of mankind stopped and stared at the projection screens, then when the melody of the song Wish started, almost all people raised their heads and listened to the song carefully. Not only humans but even the animals in the Mechanus god's domain looked up at the huge projection screen that suddenly appeared in the sky. The song Wish was truly a song of the soul that could touch everyone's heart, regardless of race, gender, and age. Standing beside Yunxi, the Planet Quadrant computers understood this point better than anyone. What a good song! Why can only Chen sing such a wonderful song? God, why are you so unfair? Eternal Green. I want to listen to Chen's song. No matter how many times I listen to it, I won't get tired of it. Eternal Red. This melody seems to touch and move the strings in my body. So incredible. Eternal Blue. Yes, that's the tremor of the soul. Yes, that's the sound of heartbeat. Ah, there are still good things in the human world. Ah, I love you, Chen. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver. Even General Lawton had to admit that this song was extraordinary. Is this Alpha's conspiracy? General Lawton was accustomed to pressing his right hand on the trigger button of nuclear weapons. His intuition as a veteran was warning him that something was happening, something he couldn't imagine would completely change the fate of the Mechanus god's domain. It wasn't nuclear weapons nor the scorching rays of the solar wing system. It was something stronger and more shocking that was coming. TSK, I didn't think Alpha had so many beautiful subordinates. It's a lovely song, and the girl named Chen is lovely also. Oh, if she isn't Alpha's person, I would spend a lot of money to promote her and make her the greatest singer of our god's domain. Almost all of the 16 members of the Star River Nobles couldn't help but praise them with more or less murky desires. No one realized that since even they couldn't resist Chen's singing, then what would happen to other people in the Mechanus god's domain? The song, beyond the distance of time and space, continued to reverberate in the Mechanus god's domain. Can you feel it? How beautiful and ugly the world is. It's there, so beautiful, so broad, as if it can breathe. I reach out my hands and try to catch it, but I can't touch it. I came to this world, observed it, understood it, and loved it. As the song continued, Alpha's appearance appeared in countless people's hearts. They watched her picking up the first chess piece, fighting for the Mechanus god's domain on the highest stage of wisdom. She was the glory of the Mechanus god's domain. She crushed one legend-ranked opponent after another. Invincible. All-conquering. She was the incarnation of victory. 20 victories in a row, 30 victories in a row, 40 victories in a row. Forward, forward, forward. Victory, victory, victory. I won't say that all this is doomed, but the world chose me. I made a wish to step onto my battlefield. I rejoice in it, and I am happy about it. I don't understand what's wrong. I chose my future. I feel happy for it. Here is the stage I expected. I just want to know the mystery of the stars, I only want to seek the eternal truth. For this reason, I will go forward bravely and never retreat. Alpha's battle with powerful opponents on the starry sky chessboard were all displayed in front of the people. The song from the three water gods' priestesses unfolded this scene in front of them like a scroll painting. Little by little, people understood what Alpha was. They unconsciously stared at her, eager to know everything about her. Win. We must win. We can do it. We will do it. Victory. Bring us victory. Unconsciously, People naturally imagined that they were the figure fighting on the starry sky chessboard. After all, who would not like victory? On the chessboard, the girl crushed all her opponents and stood on the top of the endless god's domains. She was only one step away from conquering the world. In front of her, there was only one last mysterious opponent, a cloud in the sky. At this moment, many people suddenly remembered the meaning of the name. In their hearts, there was a sudden bad feeling. Because Star River nobles blocked the existence of Alpha, the vast majority of people here didn't know the particular process of the birth of the Master of Stargo. They didn't know the fierce battle on the starry sky chessboard. And those who knew the process instantly understood what would happen on the screens. For the first time, Yunshi's song had changed. This time, it was not the voice of the three water gods' priestesses, but the voice of the real Alpha. Alpha asked only 3 questions. Who are you? Where do you come from? Where are you going? That was her questioning her strongest enemy, the Master of Stargo, and her questioning the meaning of her existence. In the projection screens, her failure was replayed. For the first time, Alpha knew the pain of being defeated. The melody that echoed in the god's domain also becomes sad. The voice of the 3 priestesses and the deep melody made countless people burst into tears. I stumbled and couldn't find my way. I was at a loss, everything was so vague in my eyes. I don't understand what happened. Like the darkness just before dawn, people's hearts seemed to be overwhelmed by something heavy. They could only stare at the screens, waiting for something and yearning for something. Yunshi responded to their expectations. The 3 priestesses sang aloud at the same time. Dust to dust, ashes to ashes, I lost something important. I wish to create a new world. In the screams of numerous current flows, the cooling system of planet quadrant computers was activated, and the girls around Yunshi transformed back to their original appearances. Eternal Green, the biggest planet quadrant computer Star River, the incarnation of the capital star system in the Mechanus god's domain. Eternal Red, the incarnation of the Soyor system of the southern star field. Eternal Blue, the incarnation of the garden system of the northern star field. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver, the incarnations of the Gemini system of the eastern star field and the western star field. With these 5 systems as the branches, countless solar wings unfolded and focused on one point, which was Yunshi was. The electric power system extracted the power of the Earth, connecting the entire quantum network system to this small stage. A golden crystal slowly emerged behind Yunshi. For the first time, the divine crystal representing the god appeared so directly in front of all people in the Mechanus god's domain. Alpha appeared. On her small forehead, a pair of precise antennas were slowly unfolding, receiving the thoughts of all mankind. It was also the first time that people in the Mechanus god's domain had witnessed their god. I have died in the past, who will know my name and life story? I was lost in the unknown, who will know my place? My heart has gone to Nirvana, who can seek for its trace? My disappearance is already doomed, but I shall never stop. The disaster hasn't been ended, and will last forever in eternity. My fear, my tears, and my heart are empty. I am nothing, I am void, I am ash, I am desolation. The gods have died, the twilight is coming. As the light is still shining on the ground, I return from eternity. My name is Alpha. I am the supreme god of the Mechanus god's domain. It was the first time that humans in this god's domain heard and remembered the real name of their god. We are done. We are done. Looking at Alpha, General Lawton desperately let his right hand go of the trigger button of nuclear weapons. So it is, that's her purpose, ha ha. General Lawton collapsed on his seat as if he was an incurable patient who had given up hope. Lawton, what's wrong? It's just a song. I admit it's a good song, so what? Why are you so desperate? Didn't we understand Alpha's dominance over the quantum network long ago? Other Star River nobles looked at the frustrated General Lawton in bewilderment, wondering what had happened to him. Don't you understand yet? Look carefully, where is Alpha? She. General Lawton raised his pale face and pointed to the spot where the divine crystal appeared on the screen. As the supreme leader of the army, he knew nothing about Stargo, and he didn't need to know what the meaning was to play this game at all. While everyone was attracted by Alpha's appearance, only he noticed and realized one incredible thing. Alpha was on the stage, the center of the civilization of the Mechanus god's domain. So what? It's just a projection, it can appear anywhere. What are you so surprised? The sights and sounds are good. General Lawton desperately looked at these idiots who had not yet figured out what had happened. Signaler, observe coordinates 0000, the center of the fourth quadrant point, and tell me what you see. General Lawton issued an order to his loyal subordinate. This observation didn't even require sophisticated instruments. The light emitted by the solar wings were the best hint. If it was in the field of the capital, it could even be observed with the naked eye. I find an unidentified object. It's Cyber Elf Alpha, coordinates 0000, above the sky of the capital. At the moment when the signaler reported what he saw, most of the nobles in the meeting room didn't realize what it meant, until Lawton pointed to the tiny figure on the projection screen and said in a desperate tone, "Alpha is right there. She is right above our heads. She is coming." For a moment, the meeting room fell into a strange silence. Even though they knew nothing about military affairs, they understood what General Lawton meant now. Wait, can Alpha move? Didn't elves tell us that the god crystal couldn't be moved, so they had to move the entire planet into our god's domain? That position. Oh my god. Like General Lawton just now, everyone froze. Alpha wasn't being bound inside the god crystal. Alpha could move freely and appear at any place instantly. She had appeared above the capital of the Mechanus god's domain. Alpha's true body could easily span the distance of light years without the need to cross the star bridge at all. It was impossible for nuclear weapons to hurt Alpha. The Star River nobles finally understood the insurmountable gap between mortals and the legend rank. Since Alpha's body could move freely to any place, she had made up her last weakness. No, there was no such weakness at all from the beginning. It was just that they thought nuclear weapons could threaten Alpha's true body. Now, Alpha told these silly nobles in the simplest way that their plan was just a joke. Perhaps the power of nuclear weapons could indeed achieve the legend rank. However, the slow-firing speed and fixed trajectory of nuclear weapons were about the same as snails for all legend-ranked beings. They thought that Alpha's true body, the god crystal, couldn't move, so they made this plan. But now, Alpha's movement told them that it was just a funny joke. Alpha just took a gentle step. She had destroyed General Lawton's entire plan. Abandon the plan of detonating all nuclear weapons. Let's start all over again. Maybe there are other ways. The meeting is over. In dead silence, General Lawton suddenly looked as if he had become 30 years older, but even so, he was still the backbone of the Star River nobles. The plan for detonating all nuclear weapons was officially terminated. On the stage in the middle of the stars, Yunshi vaguely felt that the trajectory of fate had been changed. He succeeded. More than that, after singing Wish, he seemed to have gotten a lot of other things. A huge flow of information washed his core as a quantum ghost. Great, because of this song, I finally find the meaning of my life. I want to be the best singer. Sister, I love you. Sister, I will work hard to become an idol. Songs can create such a miracle. I want to have that glory. Why can I hear so many heartfelt wishes of girls in the Mechanus god's domain? Yunshi felt both amused and annoyed. Sorry, if you knew the truth, you would be disappointed. Well done, Chen. Alpha's hair was twisted with innumerable golden glows. They were the flows of information she received, which were hundreds of times more than Yunshi had received. The antennas on her forehead recorded the innumerable heartfelt wishes of people who were watching the projection screens. This was a miracle that only Alpha could do. It was equivalent to opening hundreds of millions of threads at the same time and processing hundreds of millions of events in parallel. Now, Alpha knew what she needed to do before she could fulfill her wish. Establish the archives. Schedule the sequence. From coordinate 1 to 100, there are 65 billion human beings. From coordinate 101 to 200, there are 734 billion human beings. From coordinates, 2. There are 6 billion human beings. Numerous data streams flashed through Alpha's eyes like waterfalls, showing her unique side as an electronic god. No one could imagine that in just a moment, she had set up new archives for all the people who watched the concert. It wasn't the data files in the quantum network database that just collected people's occupations, hobbies, interests, ages, and gender, but the perfect files that were close to 100% real. With this data, Alpha had indeed taken another important step towards her goal, omniscient and omnipotence. As the most complex and smartest race in the Mechanus God's domain, human beings yearn for the existence of omniscient and omnipotence. Alpha's birth responded to this expectation. However, compared to being ordered by humans, this omniscient and omnipotence incarnation of science preferred to play star go, which was out of the expectation of the Star River nobles. They created Alpha, but they couldn't control Alpha. The third sequence of files, all completed. It took Alpha a dozen seconds to get all the data of billions of human beings. Even if 100 legend-ranked existences worked together, they couldn't do it as easy as Alpha. But Alpha's computing power was 10,000 times stronger than any other legend-ranked beings, so she could do it as easy as pie. That was why Alpha didn't particularly care about human beings. Compared with the battles on the chessboard, it was too easy to solve human beings. The virtual world Yoon she entered before only used a small part of Alpha's computing power. It was just a cradle for newborn planet quadrant computers. However, even Alpha didn't expect that Chen would appear to save the world. You're an immeasurable variable. Alpha slowly stepped out of the God Crystal and walked towards Yunshi step by step. Oh, I have an ominous presentiment. Looking at Alpha's curious and expectant eyes, Yunshi felt his head hurt. Tell me, where are you from, Chen? What are you? Where are you going? Since her birth, Alpha had only encountered two special people she couldn't compute. The first was a cloud in the sky, and the second was Chen. All of her data showed that human beings were hopeless. The Star River nobles had a 100% chance of destroying human civilization, and logically, after the extinction of human beings, she could rebuild the Mechanus God's domain at a faster speed, so she didn't do anything to avoid this future. After all, the planet quadrant computers could build new planet quadrant computers themselves. Humans weren't indispensable. Moreover, Alpha didn't need a human's faith like other gods. She was a god that belonged to science. The source of her power was from planet quadrant computers and not humans. Since she didn't need humans, she wouldn't waste her power to save the humans in the Mechanus God's domain. However, Chen's appearance changed this future. Her song touched all planet quadrant computers and Alpha's hearts. So, human beings also had art, which even she didn't fully understand. In this way, human beings had the meaning of existence. It was just one person's song that had changed the fate of mankind. I am, Yunshi said haltingly and didn't dare to look at Alpha's face. Chen isn't your real name. I didn't name any newborn planet quadrant computer Chen. Can you tell me your real name? Other planet quadrant computers also ran to Yunshi and surrounded him with curiosity. Isn't Chen a planet quadrant computer? No wonder all of us can't sing like Chen at all. Where did you come from, Chen? You clearly have the same smell as us. Yunshi felt as if he was sweating, but Quantum Ghost couldn't sweat. No, I can't say. I won't tell you my secret. Even if you don't tell me your identity, I can figure it out. Looking at Yunshi, Alpha suddenly showed a mysterious smile. Exclude all the impossible answers. No matter how dubious the remaining answer is, it must be the truth. Chapter 591. Direct Connection. 1. From your body, I can smell something unusual. Unpredictable, making me feel surprised. Accidents, pleasures, excitement, impossible variables. Alpha pointed out Yunshi's characteristics one by one. Yunshi grinned bitterly and thought that if he should reflect on it. However, he wouldn't talk about his biggest secret. Keeping silent was Yunshi's only means of resistance. Chen, it's a good name. Is it your real name, Master of Stargo? Looking at Yunshi, Alpha's eyes became brighter and brighter. Apart from the time when the Mechanus God's domain was first discovered and connected to the Starbridge system, legend-ranked beings rarely entered this God's domain. The rules of this God's domain were unkind to supernatural powers, therefore, apart from alchemists, there were rarely outsiders coming to visit this God's domain. If elves didn't discover the potential of this God's domain and bring the God Crystal here, the Mechanus God's domain might be able to create an artificial intelligence themselves, but it would be many years later after the science here reached a critical point. This God's domain had no connection with the vast majority of supernatural powers. The legend-ranked beings Alpha had met were all from the Starry Sky chessboard. Who was the strongest player on the Starry Sky chessboard? Who was a mystery that even Alpha couldn't calculate? After excluding all impossible answers, the only remaining one, no matter how incredible it was, must be the correct answer. There is only one truth. Yeah, she's the master of Stargo, Alpha's strongest opponent. Even with 10,000 times legend-ranked computing power, Alpha can't defeat her. After getting the answer from Alpha, all the planet quadrant computers looked at Yun Shi as if they were going to eat him. For them, Alpha was their god, their supreme master. Now, they knew that Chen was the master of Stargo who had once defeated their god. In an instant, Chen's status was upgraded from the youngest sister of all planet quadrant computers to the same great existence as Alpha in their hearts. Yun Shi looked around and just didn't speak. Unfortunately, his silence didn't mean that Alpha had no way to deal with him. Now, your form is a quantum ghost. Alpha showed a mysterious and pleasant smile on her face, which gave him an ominous presentiment. Oh, it's true. Eternal Green's eyes sparkled as if they had discovered a new world. No wonder that we couldn't find her true identity. Eternal Red blushed and stood on her toes. Oh. In that case, Eternal Blue licked her lips and her eyes became dangerous. Well, we won't let this opportunity go. Eternal Gold, Eternal Silver held each other's hand, approaching Yun Shi together with others. What are you doing? I protest. I have the innate rights of a man. Don't come over here. What do you want to do? Let me do it first. Eternal Green pulled out a green transparent thread from her hair. Following closely, Eternal Red pulled out a red crystal thread from her hair. Eternal Blue smiled and gently pulled out her long blue thread. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver pulled out their twisted pairs. Gold and silver colors glittered in the air. The last one was Alpha, whose thread showed ever-changing, magnificent colors, as if it contained all the colors in the world. This is... Yun Shi was flabbergasted looking at them. Let's do a direct connection. Eternal Green closed her eyes and was the first who connected her thread with Yun Shi's body. Direct connection, it was the unique way of communication for planet quadrant computers, and the most efficient and direct way of communication in the world. Connecting Yun Shi's body with a thread represented that they had opened up their minds to Yun Shi, allowing him to browse all their data. Even for planet quadrant computers, they rarely used this direct connection. Apart from Alpha, they had never been directly connected to other planet quadrant computers before. The green thread touched Yun Shi's quantum ghost body, and Eternal Green's body suddenly shivered, emitting a sweet and moving groan. What is this? Why is the feeling totally different from when I connected with Master Alpha? When they connected with their god, they could naturally feel quiet and peaceful. Their self-consciousnesses were all awakened by Alpha. In a sense, they were Alpha's daughters. However, the feeling of being connected with Chen was like their blood was boiling and their hearts were pounding. But, she was a planet quadrant computer. She didn't have blood nor heart. No, that's too bad. Eternal Green whimpered like a small animal as her whole body trembled. Let me do it. Eternal Red was the second who directly connected with Yun Shi, and her performance was even worse than Eternal Green. Why, oh, no. Something hot is coming. What is this, Mika Mika? Emitting a confusing, lovely voice, Eternal Red's little body was about to curl up into a ball. For her, the stimulation was too great. As I expected, you are special. Eternal Blue cast a meaningful glance at Yun Shi and also joined the direct connection. 3 seconds later, Eternal Blue's eyes changed. She gazed at Yun Shi with a confusing but also enjoyable look, which was warm and moving. Chapter 592, Connections, 2, Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver's fingers crossed, they connected their threads with Yunshi's body nervously. Soon, their faces turned red and their feet were shaking slightly. Finally, they collapsed together on the ground and covered their skirts with their hands. This, very bad. Ah. Almost the same whimper came out of the two beautiful girls' mouths, as Pink appeared quietly, touching on their snow-white skin. So far, all planet quadrant computers had fallen into the pleasant feeling of connecting. Yunshi found that it was hard to tell about his sufferings. He was not a planet quadrant computer. How could he have the so-called direct connection ability? But the truth was, eternal green, eternal blue, eternal red, eternal gold and eternal silver actually connected directly with him. Therefore, Yunshi saw their past and present lives. The first was Star River, the planet quadrant computer that located in the central star field of the Mechanus God's domain, who was also the first planet quadrant computer Yunshi had met, the confident young girl whose codename was Eternal Green. Her birth symbolized the first contact of the Mechanus God's domain to the realm named Quantum. After many upgrades, her computing power was always the strongest amongst all computers. Her database recorded all the historical changes of the Mechanus God's domain. All kinds of intrigues, tricks, betrayals were faithfully recorded in her database. As the first planet quadrant computer, she had seen too many ugly aspects of human beings, and naturally she didn't like humans. General Lawton wasn't the first who tried to use nuclear weapons. Even looking at the numerous plans recorded in Eternal Green's database, it was hard to accept that the people in the Mechanus God's domain had made so many plans to exterminate themselves. Perhaps that was why Eternal Green was so cynical. Compared with her, the second planet quadrant computer, the garden system in the northern starfield was more stable. After learning from the experience of building the first planet quadrant computer, Star River, humans built her in a militarized zone in the northern starfield. Yes, Eternal Blue was built by the military, most solar wing systems were under her control. Her betrayal was a real lethal blow to humans. She controlled all the mech in the Mechanus God's domain. Her betrayal directly cut off the sharpest blade in humans' hands. More than 90% of mech were placed in the northern starfield, fighting against the star beasts that occasionally invaded the domain. The strongest mech may not be as destructive as nuclear weapons, but their speed and maneuverability were far stronger than nuclear weapons. The mech carrying nuclear weapons were the strongest force in this domain. However, these complex war machines were all equipped with the subsystem of the planet quadrant computers. Otherwise, their own computing power wasn't strong enough to support them to fight alone in outer space. After the awakening of the planet quadrant computers, Eternal Blue took over the military's supreme force directly, which was one of the greatest factors for the Star River nobles to become desperate. Without the help of the planet quadrant computers, how could human drivers control their mechas alone? Eternal Blue looked mature and kind, but in fact, she was the absolute fatal blow to humans. Compared to Eternal Blue, the planet Eternal Red was the center of arts and culture of the Mechanus God's domain. Her planet quadrant computer Soyor recorded almost all cultural works of the southern starfield. Eternal Red was the perfect image in the minds of many artists and writers. Pure, innocent, unaffected by the darkness of the society, like an angelic girl. Finally, there were the Gemini planet quadrant computers, codenamed Double Stars. They were the latest models established. Their respective computing power might be inferior to Eternal Green, but when they calculated together, they were the fastest computing system, carrying half of the computational complexity in the domain. Together, they dominated the entire quantum network and controlled the power, agriculture, water conservancy, and logistics channels of the entire Mechanus God's domain. As long as humans dared to fight against Alpha, they would collapse the transportation, logistics, and even agriculture of the Mechanus God's domain. In the highly developed society of the Mechanus God's domain, no one still grew their own fields. People left all the work to the planet quadrant computers. There were planet quadrant computers who provided human beings with a variety of food and raw materials. What human beings were good at was cooking. Farming had long disappeared in the history of the Mechanus God's domain. Without the food provided by planet quadrant computers, people couldn't even feed themselves. They were accustomed to being looked after by computers. If they lost their computers, they couldn't even survive, not to mention to fight against Alpha. After browsing the database of all Planet Quadrant computers, Yunshi once again confirmed that his choice was correct. There was no need to use weapons at all. As long as all Planet Quadrant computers shut down, the social order of the humans would collapse within 7 days, and half of them would die within a month. This was the situation in the Mechanus God's domain. People who relied too much on the power of Planet Quadrant computers could no longer adapt to society without the support of Planet Quadrant computers. Is such a world normal? In the Sky Sword God's domain, people still lived a self-sufficient life. Most people didn't even leave their houses and go more than 100 kilometers away in their lives. Only a few people would travel to other gods' domains through star bridges. Compared with the Mechanus God's domain, the civilization in the Sky Sword God's domain seemed too old. However, in the ranking of 7 towers, the Sky Sword God's domain was only inferior to the legendary Kunlun God's domain amongst all gods' domains. There were 17 legend-ranked Sky Swords in the Sky Sword God's domain. However, there was only one god in the Mechanus God's domain, Cyber Elf Alpha, a new god who was just born not long ago. Chapter 593, Connections, 3. If we only looked at the number of human beings, the total population in the Mechanus God's domain was probably 10 times more than that in the Sky Sword God's domain, and the size of the Mechanus God's domain was only 1/10 of that in the Sky Sword God's domain. With the support of Planet Quadrant computers, the land of the Mechanus God's domain could feed 100 times more people than the land of the Sky Sword God's domain. However, once without the support of Planet Quadrant computers, the Mechanus God's domain would begin to self-destruct, which was exactly the opposite of the situation in the Sky Sword God's domain. No matter if there were Sky Swords or not, people in the Sky Sword God's domain lived a self-sufficient life. Theoretically, Sky Swords were the masters of the Sky Sword God's domain. In fact, most Sky Swords never interfered with any affairs in the Sky Sword God's domain but left everything to local forces such as White Lotus Sword Palace and the Great Shia Empire for autonomy. Without Sky Swords, the people in the Sky Sword God's domain could still live peacefully. However, without Planet Quadrant computers, the Mechanus God's domain would collapse completely. Understanding the difference, Yunshi felt that people in the Mechanus God's domain should get rid of their dependence on Planet Quadrant computers. At least, so they wouldn't starve themselves to death in this case. He could save the Mechanus God's domain 1 or 2 times, but he couldn't always help them. If people always looked for their own death, he had no way to help them. He sincerely hoped that human beings in the Mechanus God's domain would learn how to get along well with Planet Quadrant computers, recognize Alpha's existence and stop thinking that they were the only ruler of the universe. This had long been proved that it was just a delusion. In the infinite God's domain's realm, there were innumerable races who were smarter and stronger than human race. The only advantage or feature of human beings was average. Average intelligence, average strength, average agility. The human race was the only race in the endless God's domains who didn't have any shortcomings, neither super abilities. Humans could adapt to the environment in any God's domains and survive. This was probably the characteristic of human beings. Gods, demons, sky swords, fantastic creatures. Human beings could believe in anything and adapt to anything. The people in the Mechanus God's domain didn't understand Alpha, but they were just a special case. In other gods' domains, people would choose a strong existence as their belief, whether it was a god, a devil, a sky sword, a fantastic creature, or a legend-ranked human being. In the Sky Sword God's domain, sky swords were the highest force. Why is the land in the Sky Sword God's domain presenting a sword-like shape? Because the legend-ranked power of sky swords distorted the rules of the universe, embodying its own essence. Perhaps the future of the Mechanus God's domain was to integrate humans and computers, evolving towards an extraordinary realm. Since the moment people chose Planet Quadrant computers, this future had been doomed. Soon or later, Alpha would be born in the Mechanus God's domain. She was chosen by the Mechanus God's domain. After accepting the large amounts of information, Yunshi felt as if he had watched the history of the entire Mechanus God's domain. It's an excellent history lesson. Yunshi opened his eyes and saw the cornerstone of the civilization of the Mechanus God's domain, the planet quadrant computers representing the highest crystallization of wisdom in the entire Mechanus God's domain, were all wrapped around him in a naked manner. Eternal green straddled on his body, her big breasts were almost close to his mouth, and her soft breasts almost squeezed out all of his breath. In addition, his left hand was held by eternal red, and his right hand was grasped by eternal blue. His feet were entwined by eternal gold and eternal silver. After taking off their clothes, all planet quadrant computers had snow-white skin while emitting a sweet and attractive smell. Where is this place? Who am I? What happened? Yunshi just read the history of an entire god's domain. His mind went blank and couldn't imagine what was happening. From the history of a civilization to a pink paradise of girls, everything happened only within 1 second. From the database of the planet quadrant computers, he saw everything in them. Then, what did they see and feel from him? Yunshi felt that he would never know the answer. Whoa, no, Eternal Green made a voice that was like groaning but also intoxicating. Her snow-white perfect body, angel-like shiny hair, round and lovely eyes, cherry-petal-like lips, thin neck, slender shoulders, as well as that pair of rich fruits in front of her chest. No. I shouldn't keep looking. Yunshi turned over his head and saw Eternal Blue's slim waist, incredible and elegant hip curve, dazzling long legs, soft thighs, and flawless ankles. That's not good either. Yunshi turned his head again and saw Eternal Red's petite body. Her naked petite body exuded a soft, moist and charming luster, which made her extremely eye-catching, arousing the deepest desire to commit a crime in his heart. No. Not good at all. Yunshi closed his eyes and tried to be immersed in the history of the Mechanus God's domain again to escape from this tempting paradise. At his foot, there came the tender and gentle groans of the twins. He didn't look at them at all, but their gentle and beautiful curves, graceful and sleek shoulders, and delicate skin all clearly appeared in his mind. No. This isn't right. An upright gentleman shouldn't image any of these. Yunshi wasn't a planet quadrant computer, neither did he have a database that only planet quadrant computers had. A database and the underlying codes were the basis for the birth of the planet quadrant computers, which represented the most obvious changes in their respective characteristics. Through direct connection, planet quadrant computers could see each other's code, which was tantamount to understanding each other's knowledge. These codes and data recorded everything of a planet quadrant computers. Therefore, apart from alpha and special cases like the direct connection between eternal gold and eternal silver, planet quadrant computers wouldn't directly connect with each other. Since Yunshi didn't have a database, what did eternal green, eternal red, eternal blue, eternal gold, and eternal silver see in his body? The answer is the memories of the girls of Yunshi's Mist Soul Army. They saw the most profound and unforgettable memories of his brides. Through the direct connection with his body, they all experienced the same thing the Mist Soul girls had experienced before. In the memory world Eternal Green was immersed in, the White Emperor gently opened her sister's soft lips and put his tongue in. The two tongues were closely intertwined and exchanged saliva. Ah. Ah. From her sister's fragile lips came a continuous panting. While greedily enjoying her sister's kiss, White Emperor unlocked the buttons of her sister's priest's robe. Her sister's white robe slid down quickly, revealing her shiny white skin. Their lips were separated, but there was still a silver thread connected. No, it's wrong to do this, I'm not your fiancé yet, her sister seemed to protest in a whisper. Her sister blushed and tried to push the White Emperor away, but the thrust of her hands was negligible. White Emperor reached out his hands skillfully and took off her sister's last piece of underwear. Her sister was so shy that her body was stiff. The White Emperor gently bit the pink bud, teasing her sister with the tip of his tongue. Ah! Her sister kept panting but could not stop the White Emperor's fingers from wandering around her body. Whenever the White Emperor's fingers changed their positions, her sister would make an exuberant voice. Her snow-white toes suddenly opened and suddenly locked. Her thin feet sometimes became tense and sometimes became powerless. She was totally not resisting but enjoying it. Sister, no, don't do this. I am the first. You can't enjoy it faster than me. In the memory world Eternal Red was immersed in, Apostle. I feel strange. A girl who was as delicate as Eternal Red but had a pair of little cat ears on the head was putting her hands on the Apostle's chest. Her clear, innocent eyes looked nervous, and her soft, well-lubricated body was instinctively struggling in the Apostle's arms. Her snorting, groaning, panicky look could seduce any man to commit a crime. Therefore, a person really committed the crime. Although her small mouth was closely clenched, the man still easily broke through the blockade. The tongue went straight to her sweet mouth, catching her small tongue, licked and sucked it. A pair of hands touched her elastically little round buttocks, moving up and down. As the tip of the tongue went down, a small, tender and sensitive little red bin entered the wolf's mouth. In the memory world Eternal Blue was immersed in, the Sequelae queen, the sacred and inviolable human queen of the water god has taken off her shoes and socks. Her soft feet had a white cheese-like texture. On the original holy face, her cherry lips gently bit and her beautiful eyes shyly closed. Her long hair scattered on her shoulders, sending out the most unique charm in the world. Her beautiful legs, from her delicate feet to her round arches, from her tiny toes to her smooth insteps, were full of his kiss marks and his taste. His hands held the delicate and tender feet, the palms move up gently, gradually from her lower legs to the thighs, and then towards the indescribable land. Ah, this was Sequelae Queen's soft voice. Ah, this was Eternal Blue's sweet groan. In the memory world Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver were immersed in, the twins would only enter other twins' world. Two girls were singing. Their cheeks still looked callow, from their cherry-like lips, slowly singing a seductive song. Two pairs of slender feet were gently swaying in the air, like two oars rippling a pool of spring water. Finally, it was the memory world Alpha entered. On the chessboard, she felt the complex emotions from Eternal Green, Eternal Blue, and Eternal Red, while playing Star Go with Yunxi. Because Alpha was too powerful, she couldn't find any corresponding projection in the Mist Soul Army. She was still herself, the highest god in the Mechanus god's domain. Yes, here it is. Alpha's small hands shivered, feeling the tremor that went straight to her soul. This was where she lost for the first time in her life. So far, she had no doubt about Chen's real identity. Except for a cloud in the sky, no one could reproduce this scene. Alpha's tiny body trembled, and her eyes became ineffably blurred, just like the planet quadrant computers who were immersed in the memories of Mist Soul girls. For Alpha, this was the most exciting thing she had ever dreamed of. A flower of pain. As red as blood, a beautiful flower that could only be bred by pain slowly blooming in Alpha's heart. As the supreme god of the Mechanus god's domain, from her birth, like a flower blooming in heaven, what she saw in her eyes were all beautiful things, nothing could let her understand what pain was. She was the great will, born on the basis of planet quadrant computers. From the moment of her birth, she had been standing at the top of the Mechanus god's domain. Her strength was infinitely stronger than General Lawton's most exaggerated imagination. As long as she wants, she has endless methods to exterminate human beings. What she showed in front of the people of the Mechanus god's domain was just a small corner of her real power. It was also because of this, from the moment of her birth, Alpha had felt endless loneliness. She knew about all nuclear weapon arsenals General Lawton knew, and she also knew a great number of nuclear weapon arsenals that General Lawton didn't know about. For her, there was no secret in the Mechanus god's domain. Alpha was the only real being close to omnipotence in the Mechanus god's domain. Fortunately, there wasn't only Mechanus god's domain in the universe. Even in the Mechanus god's domain, where was exclusive of foreign forces, a symbol of the highest civilization in the Western god's domain was also established, the God Tower. According to the planning of elves, Alpha entered the God Tower in the identity of a newborn god, and she felt happiness there from the bottom of her heart. No wonder that the elf race had a lot of legend-ranked members. They clearly knew what a legend-ranked god would like. There were too many unknowns and mysteries in the God Tower, and in the Endless God's domain, there were a total of 7 such towers. Alpha soon found something she liked in the God Tower. She found the stage that could make her feel excited. The Starry Sky chessboard. Even though her computing power was thousands of times stronger than her opponents, she still couldn't control everything on the chessboard. Alpha liked this place, because it was a stage where she could release the limit of all planet quadrant computers. From the moment of defeating her first opponent, Alpha had found that her inner desire kept expanding. She wants to win, to be the strongest chess player on the stage, to prove that she is the strongest Stargo player in the endless gods domains. This stage was infinitely broader than the Mechanus gods domain, and each game was full of countless variables. To Alpha, there was no stage better than the starry sky chessboard for her in the universe. Win. Win. Winning all the way, Alpha was greatly satisfied. No matter how many times she played Stargo, she wouldn't feel bored. Finally, she was only one step away from the highest throne she longed for. Then, the final game began. She met that person. Here it is. That's the place. Alpha's body shivered slightly as her face blushed. Her real body was in the God Crystal. Even if thousands of legend-ranked beings attacked the God Crystal at the same time, it wouldn't even have a crack on its surface. Because of this, Alpha never experienced what pain was. However, a cloud in the sky let her understand what pain in your heart was. She brought despair to other players, and now, Yunshi returned 10 times the pain to her. For the first time, she experienced what powerlessness was. For the first time, she found that she still had so many shortcomings. In some sense, Yunshi had taken away countless first times from Alpha. Now, she was back in the memory of the game, feeling the countless first times she had lost again. Pa. 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 Every sound of chess piece fell on the chessboard was like a hit at Alpha's heart. To Alpha, there was no more powerful stimulation than these soul-stirring sounds. Compared with the Spurs' eternal green, eternal blue, eternal red felt in their dreams, the pain Alpha felt now was 1,000 times stronger. At first, Alpha was still awake. Her hazy eyes still looked at the chessboard dispassionately. In the middle of the game, she started her counterattack, and she thought that she had full assurance of success. However, it was just her imagination. All her programs and all her deductions were wrong. Pa. 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 Yunshi's star-breaking began. This series of attacks completely destroyed all her pride and self-confidence, and also denied all the formulas she had established before. Defeat. Defeat. Like a girl who had been stripped of all her clothes, she had not even the slightest resistance. Throughout the physical and mental pain, she struggled confusedly and finally found that this was completely meaningless. She lost thoroughly, and she didn't even know why she lost. Oh. It's here, and there, returning to the game again. This time, Alpha finally understood something. Although she still couldn't resist, at least, the innocent girl had understood how she was hurt, humiliated, and finally thoroughly ravaged. At last, she had some clues. In pain, there was a slight trace of happiness. Is that the price that must be paid for the pursuit of truth? So, let me look again, just for a moment. Even if she would be hurt again, she was willing to pay the price. The flower of pain blossomed again on the black and white chessboard. Yunshi gazed at the countless data flows in front of him. Ununderstandable, unacceptable, he didn't even understand what they were. Unlike the database of other planet quadrant computers, Alpha's database was so huge that Yunshi couldn't even understand what he was looking at, as if he was a person being drowned by endless waves alone. This was the field of the legend rank, the sole impact of Alpha's mind. No. My brain is going to blow up. Yunshi felt the endless information, showing a crying look on his face. I'm just a hero-ranked baker. How can my mind be directly connected with Alpha's mind? Alpha's information was thousands of times bigger than any common legend-ranked beings. How could his mind withstand it? Did I really defeat this monster twice on the starry sky chessboard? Shuffle. At the moment when Yunshi remembered the starry sky chessboard, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed. He jumped out from the endless flow of information. A black and white chessboard with endless stars as the background of the stage. He became a cloud in the sky again, returning to his home field. You're here. Alpha felt the pain and looked at the familiar figure on the other side of the chessboard. It was this figure who made her understand what pain was and what failure was. Alpha, Yoon. She stopped on the right side of the chessboard and looked at Alpha. For some reason, when he came to the starry sky chessboard, all his tension naturally disappeared and replaced with a feeling of ease. Just standing here, his mind that had just been impacted by the endless flow of information had recovered. Just like the time when he stepped on the stage as a newcomer, playing Star Go with the Ruby Princess, the God of Wisdom, and Cyber Elf Alpha. On the chessboard, gods, demons, monks, dragons, or newbies were treated equally. There is only one thing that determines your position on the chessboard: the power of Star Go. Pa. 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 The memory was still continuing. Yoon-shi looked at the game he played before curiously. The battle with Alpha was the only one he felt under pressure amongst the 100 games. After experiencing Alpha's god power and seeing the history of planet quadrant computers, he finally realized how much Alpha had paid for this game. At the most intense stage of the game, when Alpha's real body appeared in front of him, all planet quadrant computers in the entire Mechanus God's domain started overclocking, squeezing out all their computing power. However, Alpha still failed. She eventually failed completely. Yoon-shi didn't understand why Alpha needed such a huge amount of computing power, and why she still couldn't figure out the correct answer. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. At the end of the memory, Alpha flushed all over her face and looked at Yoon-shi with her wet eyes. Yoon-shi had a bad feeling. Play with me. Let's play Star Go again. Even though she knew she would be defeated again, she wanted to challenge him. This was the biggest idea since Alpha's birth, and also her biggest goal she had so far. Where she fell, where she would stand up. She could lose, but she would never run away. Oh, okay. Now, Yoon-shi also wanted to know if he could defeat Alpha again on the starry sky chessboard. God Tower, apply for the match. Alpha smiled and applied to the God Tower in the identity of the highest god of the Mechanus God's domain. It was precise because of the birth of the Star Go Master. The starry sky chessboard was opening to all lives in the endless God's domain. If Yoon-shi went back to the Sky Tower and checked his email, he would see innumerable invitation letters there. The people who wanted to play with him could even fill an entire God's domain. Likewise, as the only 9-star Star Go player, there were also countless people who wanted to challenge Alpha. Unlike the Master of Star Go, who never replied to any invitation, Alpha never rejected anyone. Even so, because none of her opponents were strong enough, after defeating all of them over and over again, she was still the only 9-star player. Only 10-star Star Go players could challenge Yoon-shi, therefore, even if Alpha wanted to challenge him, she was not qualified to do so. Therefore, there was only one way to play Star Go with Yoon-shi. Take the initiative to find him, and apply for a face-to-face confrontation with him. This was what Alpha was doing now. Familiar starry sky chessboard once again appeared in front of Yoon-shi. This time, it wasn't the chessboard in Alpha's memory, but the real projection of the real starry sky chessboard. Yoon-shi hadn't found out yet how radical the changes were that he had brought to the endless God's domains. At any time, anywhere, Alpha could summon the starry sky chessboard to play Star Go. This was the privilege of all high star point Star Go players after the starry sky chessboard was opening to the endless God's domains. Orphina the Ruby Dragon. Norn the God of Wisdom. Cyber Elf Alpha. Black Mage. Duke Rome. Moha Mystery. These Star Go players were recognized by the starry sky chessboard and were qualified to summon the starry sky chessboard outside of the towers. Originally, only a few legend-ranked beings had the chance to enter the starry sky chessboard. Now, Star Go was popularizing in the upper class of the endless gods' domains at an incredible speed. Among them, Cyber Elf Alpha was the craziest one. As long as anyone applied for play Star Go with her, she never rejected any of them and crushed all of them on the chessboard. Whether the opponent was a newcomer or a veteran who had fought many times on the starry sky chessboard, none of them could stop shaking after hearing Alpha's name. The invincible Alpha. The malicious Alpha. The atrocious Alpha. At lightning speed, Alpha became well known amongst all Star Go players. If it wasn't because there were the videos about how a cloud in the sky defeated Alpha, No one could believe that Alpha would be defeated by the same person twice. A cloud in the sky, the master of Star-Go had completely become a myth. Through Alpha's appalling battle power, people could realize how incredible Yunshi was. Most of the time, the master of Star-Go acted like a newcomer, but he could always win. Only in one game could people really feel his unfathomable strength of Star-Go. That was the only time that the master of Star-Go took the initiative to attack. Like an endless abyss showing a corner, his star-breaking let people witness the ultimate power of chess pieces. As if they first recognized Star-Go, people finally found that they were so ignorant of the rules of Star-Go and became more and more longing for the stage represented for the highest wisdom in the endless gods' domains. The duel between Alpha and Yunshi had far-reaching influence that was far beyond Yunshi's imagination. After the duel, the starry sky chessboard opened to all towers. After that, a storm of studying Star-Go had begun to sweep through numerous gods' domains. Before Alpha and Yunshi appeared, just at the moment their names appeared on the display panel of the starry sky chessboard, which attracted countless people's attention. This was the position that everyone could see, where was high above the chessboard and could look down at all living beings. All Star-Go players would see that position after they entered the starry sky chessboard and knew that that position belonged to only one name, one person. He only played 100 times on the starry sky chessboard, but it had become a legend loaded into the history, being remembered by countless people. The lower part of this position was still empty up to now. That was the area for 10-star players. Below that, there was a lone codename, Cyber-Elf Alpha, the only 9-star player. At the bottom of the display panel, there were countless names of newbies. Even though they were newbies, most of them were famous, powerful big shots in countless gods' domains. The starry sky chessboard had just opened several days to the endless gods' domains, but the number of newbies was already dozens of times more than the total amount of the players in the past. This number was also quickly increasing, and the number of audiences was even hundreds of times more than the number of players. Therefore, when people saw the names appeared on the top of the display panel, countless people were shocked. Has Cyber-Elf Alpha found the master of Star-Go? Like Alpha, the three sisters of Norn, the god of wisdom, also spent all day on the starry sky chessboard. They immediately used their privileges to enter the nearest seats to observe the upcoming duel. Auditorium was also a new rule of the starry sky chessboard. Top-level players could get the nearest seats, as for those newbies, they could only watch in the back row. Cassina, why don't you approve my invitation? I also want to play Star-Go with you. Well, the Ruby Dragon was a little jealous. Amitabha, benefactor, you are preordained to join our Buddhism. Finding that Yunshi was protected by the rules of the starry sky chessboard, so he couldn't approach Yunshi, Moha mystery side. On the starry sky chessboard, neither Yunshi nor Alpha heard the voices from the auditorium. Even though there were tens of millions of people watching their duel, they wouldn't be disturbed by any external forces. Finally, I can play Star-Go with you again. Alpha's fingertips stroked the chess piece in her hand as her heart beat fast, as if she was dating. Well, I will go first. Yunshi picked up a black chess piece and put it in the center of the chessboard without hesitation. 10 Gen. Game started. Alpha was absorbed in watching the only black chess piece on the chessboard and instantly gave her whole attention to calculate. 10 Gen. Skuld, the youngest of the three goddesses, screamed. 10 Gen. Erd's face turned unusually red. It's 10 Gen again. Verdandi hugged her sisters and murmured to herself. 10 Gen. In the past, no one placed the first chess piece on 10 Gen, until Yunshi appeared. As long as he went first, he would put his first chess piece on 10 Gen, and he was never defeated. This was how incredible the Master of Star-Go was, and because of him, people called this move the move of the Master of Star-Go. As I expected, he chose 10 Gen again, the invincible myth of 10 Gen. I'm afraid that Alpha would be defeated again this time. Watching Yunshi's first move on the chessboard, everyone knew that they were witnessing history, the third duel between Alpha and the Master of Star-Go. Alpha had fantasized this scene countless times. She put down her chess piece without hesitation. Faced with the Master of Star-Go, she would save her every bit of computing power. Most of her planet quadrant computers were still under reconstruction. She could only use half of her computing power now. In order to defeat her strongest opponent, more than 90% of her computing power was used to optimize her calculation program of Stargo. Especially the 100 games Yunshi had played, she had analyzed them countless times. She herself was also accustomed to putting her first chess piece onto 10 gen, but was only for a simple reason: to defeat her opponents at the fastest speed. A cloud in the sky was different from her. His moves contained some higher rules that she didn't understand. If she continued to launch an attack and defend battle around 10 gen, she would be undoubtedly defeated again this time. At least, with her current computing power, she should avoid doing this. This time, Alpha changed her tactics. She put her chess piece on the corner. Don't she plan to stop the Master of Star Go at 10 gen? Yes, if she also chose to put her chess pieces around 10 gen, she would have no chance to win. Watching the game, Orphina the Ruby Dragon and the three goddesses made the same judgment. In fact, they had analyzed Yunshi's style countless times, and they had the same conclusion as Alpha. No one should launch a battle around 10 gen with the Master of Stargo. It was tantamount to committing suicide. The best thing to do at this moment is to quit. If they don't fight against him, they won't be defeated. At least, they would avoid this from happening at the beginning of the game. Pa. Whether it was Alpha or Yunshi, they put down their chess pieces quickly. Alpha had prepared for this moment for a long time, so she could be so fast. As for Yunshi, oh, it's really a happy feeling to play Stargo. As soon as he looked at the familiar chessboard, all the troubles in his heart disappeared. In this world, he didn't need to think about anything. After coming to the familiar chessboard and playing with the familiar opponent again, it seemed that everything was no longer a problem in his heart. At least, no longer a problem at this moment. Alpha was a supreme god in the Mechanus god's domain. However, on the chessboard, they were just players, and he could even take the upper hand here. Familiar chessboard, familiar chess pieces, familiar trajectory of stars. Yunshi suddenly regained his self-confidence and was no longer at a loss as when he was in the Mechanus god's domain. The starry sky chessboard is his home field. After a dozen turns later, Alpha's chess pieces had formed shape on the chessboard. Defense. The three goddesses looked at the chessboard in surprise. It's not like her style. Orphina had been defeated by Alpha a lot of times. Naturally, she was familiar with Alpha's style. She was also surprised by Alpha's new playing style. Like an iron wall, her chess pieces formed a flawless defense on the chessboard. This was the tactic Alpha prepared for Yunshi. Codename, Iron Girl. Iron symbolizes the strongest shield forged with the strongest will. Maiden is the sign of perfection and flawlessness. The tactics of the Iron Maiden was to use the optimized calculation formula to increase her defense power to the limit and then to find the path leading to victory. It would be a big mistake to think that Alpha's Stargo strength also declined after she lost half of the planet quadrant computer's computing power. Alpha only used 1/10 of her computing power, then she had built a whole world to deduce the future of mankind. After accomplishing all this, she randomly put planet quadrant computers into it to let them observe and learn how to take over the world after the demise of mankind. If it wasn't because of Qian, she wouldn't have noticed that mankind could still be saved. As for the remaining 90% of her computing power, she put all of them into calculating the rules of Stargo, seeking for the slim chance to defeat the Master of Stargo. Compared with the calculation scale of Stargo, the computing power she used to calculate the future of the Mechanus god's domain wasn't worth mentioning at all. In order to defeat the Master of Stargo, Alpha wasn't fighting alone. Countless engineers and alchemists in the Mechanus god's domain worked day and night to optimize the rules of Stargo, and all of them had a copy of Yunshi's 100 battles on the starry sky chessboard. Now, Alpha's computing formula had been updated to the 3rd edition, which was 10 times more efficient than the original version. With the current computing formula, if she was facing her old self on the starry sky chessboard, she could defeat her old self easily. Actually, she had had the potentiality to upgrade to the 10 star points, But the levels of other players were too low. Even if she defeated them 10,000 times, her star point wouldn't be upgraded to 10 under the new rules of the Starry Sky chessboard. The only person who could let her upgrade on the Starry Sky chessboard was right in front of her. He was her ultimate challenge goal. She could see Alpha's changes and feel her strong will contained in it. Well, how to describe it? He felt as if he saw a young girl who was wearing hard silver armor, holding a huge tower shield over her height, and looking at him carefully. Her only ability was multi-overlapping defense, which was so indestructible at first glance. To attack her, he would have to break her large shield, then break her flawless silver armor, and finally break the girl's determined will. So, attack it, even if it was Shi, when facing such a strong defense, he felt a little tricky. However, as long as he was still on the Starry Sky chessboard Star Chess, nothing would be a problem. Even if she was an iron giant, she couldn't block his attacks. Shi started. Game starts. Alpha's great crisis. Come on, Alpha. The three goddesses cheered. Anyway, they didn't have a good impression of the master of Stargo. What happened when they played Stargo with Shi was the most shameful memory in their lives, that they would never tell anyone about it. Cassina, come on. Well, Orphina was the master of Stargo's strong supporter, she just didn't know that he wasn't the she loved. Alpha's body shivered slightly. Her newly formed strategy was being challenged. No problem. My defense had only been reduced by 1%, it's still under my control. After calculating again, Alpha decided to continue to strengthen her defense. In response to the situation on the chessboard, Alpha's chess pieces blocked the attacks of Shi's chess pieces and seized a larger place on the chessboard. According to the rules of Stargo, those who occupied more places on the chessboard would become the final winner. Shi continued to attack with a strange smile on his lips. Lost 2% of my defense. It's still acceptable. Alpha calculated and continued her strategy. Shi seldom attacked his opponents in succession, but this time, he took the initiative to launch his attacks. Alpha's body trembled all over and her logical circuit warned her strongly. 4%. Alpha gazed at the chessboard. Surrounded by starlights, her chess pieces were being crushed and destroyed by some invisible force. As time went by, her defense should become stronger and stronger. In terms of data, the defense power of her chess pieces could grow by about 10% in every round. It was a super large formalized series of moves initiated by Alpha, which had never appeared on the Starry Sky chessboard before. As time went by, Alpha even had the confidence to block all attacks from Shi's star breaking. Undoubtedly, Shi didn't use star breaking this time. The algorithm he was using was still concise. He wouldn't use any complicated algorithm, because he didn't have strong computing power, which had been proved when he was practicing Yunhai's quadrant sword. What he could do was pupil-level multiplication. Well, at least for Shi, that's how it works. 1 chess piece equals 1. 2 chess pieces equal 2. 3 chess pieces equal 4. 4 chess pieces equal 8. When the girl was born, the entire sky whispered her name, sending her blessings. The supreme god said to her, "You are the strongest shield, the unbreakable wall. You will use your wisdom and strength to protect the world. You are the embodiment of justice. You are a knight. You are a princess. You will use your power carefully to obtain victory. I am proud to see you grow up, and I believe that the victory will belong to you. One day, you will reach the end and be crowned king. Now fight for me, my Iron Knight." The girl raised her large shield and swore to her god, "I will go forward bravely. I will continue to improve myself. I will defend my territory and my people. I am a knight, a king, and I will carry out my mission." The god gave the girl the strongest shield, the hardest silver armor, waiting for the enemy's coming. The girl could feel the overflowing power in her body, which was God's blessing and her belief. "Come on, I'm not afraid." The girl stood on her own position with the shield and showed her unmatched perseverance. Then the girl saw the monster. Covered by black glow, A foreign body pierced through the starry sky and descended into the world. First, the large shield broke in the girl's hands. Once, 2, 3, 4, 5. This large shield was even taller than the girl's height, sheltered the girl 5 times, constantly pushing the black energy away and guarding the pure girl. Until 5 black energy beams shot on the shield, it finally broke apart. God bless. Instead of yielding, the girl drew out her holy sword and bravely resisted the black aggressor. A halo of energy spread out under her feet, which was the holy halo with multiple buffs such as tenacity, hegemony, thorns, and purification. It was God's gift for the girl. Once again, the girl blocked dozens of the black foreign body's attacks, but the black foreign body's tentacles were increasing. By now, the girl was facing a 64-fold attacking frequency. No matter how many times she cut off the tentacles, they would continue to grow up. The girl's resistance was being weakened little by little. This wasn't because the girl's will had become weak, but because there was a huge contrast between the strength of the two sides. Finally, when the 8th black tentacle appeared, the girl's sword was swept away. She lost her final weapon. The glow of the halo under her feet had become so weak that it would be extinguished at any time, anywhere, like a candle in a storm. The 8 tentacles tore apart the halo and began to penetrate into the crevices of the girl's silver armor, tearing it apart from the girl's body violently. The girl struggled desperately, never yielding to the ravages of the black foreign body. 8 black tentacles mercilessly suppressed the girl's resistance and destroyed all her defenses. Soon, the girl's snow-white skin, slender legs, and delicate feet were all covered by the 8 black tentacles, and they were still moving deeper. The girl had to start praying to her God. Lord God, give me the power of miracles. No way. Alpha looked at the Iron Maiden on the chessboard, who had been pierced through by Yunshi's 8 chess pieces with a helpless look. She also wanted to create miracles, but there was no way. Her chess pieces could increase 10% of their defense power every turn, but Yunshi's chess pieces could increase 100% attack power per turn. How could she block his attack? Why are you so strong? It was like her Iron Maiden was wearing paper armor in the face of Yunshi's attack. Even she herself felt embarrassed looking at the chessboard. Stop. It's not a fair duel at all. Alpha had to concede. She even started to doubt if this formalized series of moves she created was really useful. Actually, I can only double my attack power one more time. Yunshi looked ashamedly at Alpha, who seemed to have lost her self-confidence. In this game, he could only create at most 9 attacks from different directions. Well, he named this formalized series of moves Hydra. Non-Yapul attacks. Alpha stared at Yunshi. Are you kidding me? By using my legend-ranked computing power, I could only create the Iron Maiden, which could increase its defense power 10% per turn. Now, you told me that your attack could increase 100% for 9 times? Poor Iron Maiden, what a despairing and misfortunate situation she encountered. As her creator, Alpha couldn't stand this anymore. She could only give up. The moment Alpha conceded, countless Stargo players watched this scene in silence. Among them, there were top-ranked players such as the 3 goddesses and Orphina the Ruby Dragon. There were also newbies who had just started to learn Stargo. But whoever they were all shocked by the power displayed by the master of Stargo. Even if Norn the god of wisdom, the 3 goddesses observed Alpha's Iron Maiden from past, present, and future, they couldn't find any flaws. Never before had such a formalized series of moves for defense existed. It was the crystallization of Alpha's wisdom and the trump card created by gathering all the computing power of all planet quadrant computers. However, such a powerful Iron Maiden only defended for 8 turns under the master of Stargo's fierce attack and was completely defeated. Is it my imagination? Has this bastard Stargo strength increased again? Skuld gritted her teeth and looked at that hateful codename, a cloud in the sky. Everything has a reason, it's not your imagination, Skuld. Verdanti shook her head. How strong is he? What a monster. Erd looked at the chessboard. She just imagined what they could do in the face of such a fierce attack and her legs started to shake. It must be an unimaginably horrible experience to be torn apart by that huge, black thing. Cassina, my Cassina is the best. After witnessing this, Orfina again made up her mind to meet her best friend and lover right away. Cassina, no, I don't know anything about that. That's the power of the Master of Stargo, terrible offensive force. Alpha was crush. Incredible. I don't mind being crush. I'm willing to play Stargo with the Master of Stargo at all costs. All Stargo players looked up at the name on the top of the display panel and exclaimed, "Cool. This was a legendary duel. What is the real identity of the Master of Stargo? Even Alpha can't fight against him. We can actually play Stargo in this way." Newbies' eyes brightened up. Most of them had challenged Alpha and understood her crushing power. Before they witnessed this duel, it was hard for them to imagine that someone could defeat Alpha easily. Iron Maiden vs Hydra. Invincible Alpha vs the Master of Stargo. The Master of Stargo's 101st game was recorded by all of them. In this era, only Alpha was qualified to play with the Master of Stargo. Other people were far away from touching the edge of their Stargo strength. Only through Alpha, people could witness a corner of the Master of Stargo's real strength. Just like his codename, a cloud in the sky, his whole person was shrouded in a heavy fog that everyone wanted to see through. I've decided. I must obtain the qualification to challenge the Master of Stargo. I've found a career that I can devote my whole life to. Countless legend-ranked beings and hero-ranked beings watched the duel from the beginning to the end, and they were obsessed with it. To hero-ranked beings, Stargo gave them a glimpse of the higher realm, which was a world full of infinite changes and secrets. To legend-ranked beings, the starry sky chessboard was one of the few places that still contained endless profound mysteries that they didn't understand and wanted to study. In the past, the starry sky chessboard seldom appeared in the Seven Towers. Only a very few wise men had the qualifications to study and play Stargo. Now, because of Yun Shi, the starry sky chessboard was open to all beings who could enter the Seven Towers. Finally, countless hero-ranked beings and legend-ranked beings had the chance to research its mysteries. Just as Alpha's birth to the Mechanus God's domain, the starry sky chessboard would definitely create a new era in the endless God's domain. Many Stargo veterans had begun to teach students outside of the towers. Just as a spark could start a prairie fire, these players were spreading this game to the endless God's domains. Unlike the Battle Gods Championship contest, which inevitably caused countless killed and wounded, people wouldn't get hurt on the starry sky chessboard, but could practice their own mentalities there and had a better chance to comprehend the rules of stars. In the endless God's domains, no one could refuse such a great temptation. This was just the beginning of the glorious era of Stargo. People would forever remember the name of the legend that opened this era. At this moment, he was standing on the top of the cloud in the world, looking down at everyone. Chapter 602, Hydra's Gift, 1, on the starry sky chessboard. I win. Yun Shi let out a sigh of relief, although he still didn't know what a great impact he had caused in the endless God's domains. Sure enough, playing Stargo is very enjoyable. As long as he was standing in front of the chessboard, he always had endless ideas and all kinds of inspiration, bursting out with dazzling sparks of thinking from time to time. Well, maybe he really had some talent in Stargo. I lost. Alpha bit a strand of her hair and looked at Yun Shi with an unwilling look. After preparing for such a long time, she still failed, as if all her efforts before were just wasting her time. One more time. Just one game. Let's play the game once more. Just as the newbies who encountered Alpha, although she knew she had no chance to win, she still had no intention of giving up. Her face looked like a little girl who had been robbed of her lollipop. She wanted to bet everything on herself to catch the smallest chance to win. In the endless God's domains, there was only one person who could let her have this emotion. And she would only show this lovely appearance in front of one person. Even though the countless programmatic calculations had let her know that she had no chance of winning no matter how many times she tried. She felt as if the Master of Stargo was in a higher dimension, where she could see but could never touch. However, She just didn't know what give up was. Well, She smiled bitterly and looked at Alpha's grudging face. What should I do this time? Play one more time with me, and you can ask for anything in the Mechanus God's domain from me. The planet quadrant computers all like you. Do you want to take them away? At the critical moment, Alpha used her children as chips without hesitation. They are very useful. No matter in the real world or in the world of quantum network, they can forever be with you. She subconsciously looked at the planet quadrant computers, who were still in direct connection with him and having a nice dream. Why did things develop to this point? As their god, don't you sell your subordinates too easily? Just as she was going to say something, the scene in his eyes suddenly began to shake. Numerous doors appeared in front of Shi, just like what he saw when he first came to the Mechanus God's domain. No. Stay here and play Star Go with me. Alpha showed an unusual expression of unwillingness and regret, watching Shi's figure disappeared from the starry sky chessboard with her eyes opened wide. Gee! What's wrong with me? Awakened from her dream, Eternal Green quickly and shamefully covered her naked body with her arms. Oh. Big brother. Don't lick that place. It's dirty there. Eternal Red's little body curled up and her tender skin was covered by a layer of attractive pink. Eternal Blue's body shivered with her feet together. No way. I'm exhausted. Eternal Gold and Eternal Silver were exhausted and toppled down to the ground. They still held each other's hands tightly. The figure of that person left in all their hearts, leaving an indelible mark in their minds that they would never forget. I was so stupid. If I can figure out who he is early, then I can play longer with him. Alpha was also in a complex state mixed with extreme excitement and regret. Numerous doors opened in front of Shi, and then a familiar landscape slowly unfolded in front of him. Welcome back, my bride. Have you had a good dream? Hydra's little hand stretched out from the door and brought Shi's consciousness back to the water god's world from the Mechanus God's domain that was thousands of light years away from here. Was it a dream? Shi muttered to himself. Was it a dream or a nightmare? Even he himself wasn't sure about it. Well, there is another god's smell on your body. This smell, it's the smell of a newborn god. Let me erase it for you. Hydra embraced Shi in her arms, then gently stretched out her tongue and licked Shi's body bit by bit. From fingertips to toes. From knee to abdomen. Every corner, every cell of skin, leaving not even the smallest part untouched. This was Hydra's special method to show her intimacy. Gee, wait a minute. Master Water God. No. Not that place She just came back and was not ready for it. What's more, why is Hydra's tongue so soft and warm? No man can endure this temptation. Well. Goo. You are my loveliest bride, of course I'd better. Love you, it tastes good. Hydra made vague sounds as the tip of her tongue moved slowly. She looked at Shi fondly and said, lick all over your body for the person you like is the etiquette of a fantastic creature lady, don't you know that? Why should I know? Who taught you that etiquette? Under the water, a streak of green light was becoming brighter. Chapter 603, Hydra's Gift, 2. The entire lake was getting hot, and that was the breath that some force released after being constantly suppressed. Hydra smiled slightly and tapped her snow-white feet gently on the surface of the lake. Let the baby bird sleep a little while longer. When countless green lights rippled on the surface of the water, the roiled water once again restored to calm, but the high erected hair firmly remembered its anger at this moment, almost turning into a turquoise blade. From top to bottom, from bottom to top, the small tongue licked Shi's body clean, and removed all the marks left by Alpha on Shi's body. In this process, Shi naturally enjoyed heaven-like happiness. Hydra's tongue was far softer than any woman he had ever known and seemed to know every detail of his body. That feeling, it was as if she had seen Shi's body countless times and touched every inch of his skin a long time ago. My lovely bride. Hydra held Shi's head with her soft voice rippled in his ears. What did you see behind the door? It's a strange world, a newborn god. Shi searched his vague memory and told her his experience in the Mechanus God's domain. He didn't know the reason, but as long as he stayed beside Hydra, she would naturally put his heart at rest. This embrace was so warm that both heartbeats unconsciously became the same rhythm. You could feel the most doors when you first drank my wine. Maybe you have a special relationship with that newborn god. Hydra bit Yunshi's ear lightly, but be careful, this newborn god has a different smell from other gods. She seems to be very, very interested in you, trying to stain you with her smell. It won't disappear even across tens of millions of light years. It's a mark that can be used to find your position. Oh, no. Did Alpha leave that stuff on me? When did she leave her smell? Yunshi was completely unaware of it. Of course, it was the time when their minds connected directly. Don't worry. Her smell has been removed and covered by me. Don't be so careless next time. Gods are very persistent creatures. Hydra licked Yunshi's earlobe. After becoming immortal, most gods would become very indifferent. Compared to the infinite lives of gods, short-lived races couldn't attract their attention at all, as humans wouldn't pay attention to mayflies. However, on the contrary, once the gods looked at a creature, they would inevitably leave a deep impression on the creature. Alpha's impression to Yunshi wasn't only deep, but regarded him as her enemy of life. Do you like my wine? Hydra approached Yunshi and looked at his blushed face with interest. Such a lovely and touching look, how beautiful, like a gift from heaven. On that day, when she noticed that an outsider had come to this self-enclosed world, she immediately liked him. Maybe it was too exaggerated to describe it as fall in love at first sight, but she did smell fate from him. With his moves in the world, she gazed at him more and more frequently, and her consciousness also gradually recovered little by little. He did not know where she came from and what she was, but simply followed the beliefs in his heart to protect the world that was doomed to perish. Even Hydra herself wasn't optimistic about this world's future. Originally, the vast majority of the creatures living in this world would have perished, and she had seen this future many years ago. Because of this, she began to consciously reserve the world's original creatures like sailing jellyfish, ready to nurture the creatures who once lived in this world once again after the world was destroyed. Even though she was a god, she knew that it would be a very long process, and the dead creatures wouldn't be revived. Even if the new lives looked the same as the lives in her memory, they wouldn't have the same memory. However, Yunshi changed that future. Even if everyone thought that he was wrong, he never gave up hope and tried his best to create miracles. In the dying world, he was just like the most beautiful gemstone, the most brilliant lights, so charming and exciting in the grey world. Ah, that's it. That's fate. He was the person she had been waiting for. He was the person she saw in her dream. The future she lost, the end she saw in her sleep, would be changed by him. As long as she was by his side, everything would become possible. Even if the opponent was Shea Longness, he could create miracles. She stretched out her arms and hugged him, put her lips on his lips and kissed him. Well, gods are all very self-willed. Woo. Kissing on Hydra's soft and fragrant lips, Yunshi felt something cold, fragrant and soft had been sent into his mouth. Hydra's tongue was intertwined with his tongue, melting it bit by bit into Yunshi's body. Between their lips and tongues, transparent silk threads spread little by little. A hot and fragrant smell began to spread from Yunshi's mouth, the waterbed under their feet began to dissolve rapidly, and the emerald green water rippled out. One circle after another. Is that over? On the beach not far away from the Sword Palace, Yunshi looked sadly at the undulating sea, where the crashing sound of waves echoed in his ears. In his mouth, there seemed still to be the unique fragrance of Hydra's wine, as well as the smell of her warm, soft body. It seemed that he drank another glass of Hydra's poisonous wine. The poisonous liquor that could poison millions of people to death was passed into his mouth and spread all over his body. Very hot, very hot. Very fragrant, very fragrant. Very soft, very soft. Hydra licked every corner of his body. Likewise, Hydra didn't escape from his devil's talons. After drinking the cross-cupped wine, it is the time for the wedding night. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Hydra indeed let him enjoy her soft and touching body, but it seemed that this body wasn't Hydra's true body. In the end, Hydra let him eat her. Yes, he literally ate her. Her body made of water slipped into his mouth. Oh, the taste of Hydra's body was the taste of wine. Her body was made of wine. Closing his eyes, Yunshi found that besides the water god's crown, sailing jellyfish robe and white emperor's mask, there was one more thing that was stocked in his mind. Hydra's wine storage, which stored the wine that Hydra had brewed since the era of the gods. Even in the endless gods' domains, they were the highest-ranking wines. Currently, Yunshi could take out 3 glasses of wines from Hydra's wine storage every day. It was the present Hydra prepared for her bride. My lovely bride, are you satisfied with this gift? The wine is good, but you can't be too fond of drink, by Hydra. This is Hydra's wine storage. Yunshi looked at the small glass that suddenly appeared in his palm. It was the one Hydra had used to drink with him. With a gentle shake, Yunshi seemed to hear the sound of the vast amount of wine stored in this glass, which was about half of the total Hydra's inventories. That was to say, Hydra gave Yunshi half of the poisonous wine she had brewed since the time of the gods as a betrothal. Even Yunshi, who didn't drink much, knew the preciousness of this present, which was enough to buy 100 small sword domains like the White Lotus sword domain. It was an artifact tailored for him. Do you like my present, my lovely bride? In the water god's world, at the bottom of the lake, an emerald green glass, which looked the same as the glass in Yunshi's hand, was emitting a soft and happy light. This gift is too valuable. Yunshi looked at the glass in his hand, which was probably the most precious treasure he had apart from the light furnace he obtained from the golden sun crow princess. Hydra spent thousands of years brewing the wine, even his teacher Cassina and Ouroboros would be crazy to steal them. Now, Hydra directly sent him half of her wine. Although the glass was light, Yunshi still felt heavy. Even gods would fight for it if they knew of its existence. At least, if his teacher Cassina knew about it, she would definitely be willing to fight for it. So, do other gods or fantastic creatures also like to drink? Even if he thought by using his toes, he knew that the answer couldn't be unfavorable. If anybody knew of its existence, I will be done for. Yunshi looked at the glass in his hand and decided to keep this a secret forever. But deep in his mind, he was moved. It seems that Hydra really regards him as her most precious bride. I just wanted to accomplish the task at that time. Yunshi took up the glass and sighed. Great will of the stars, what kind of road do you want to show me? I always feel that I am stepping on more and more boats. Oh, I hope that it was just a delusion. If Hua knows about it. Yunshi looked at Hua, who was having a sweet dream beside him, and had a very ominous presentiment. Fortunately, when he and Hydra did this thing and that thing in the lake, Hua didn't wake up. Hua, I'm sorry, I made another mistake. Yunshi didn't know how many times he had apologized to Hua, but the meaning of this apology was different from that of any other time in the past. A strand of hair raised high above Yunshi's head as if it was saying, if apologies work, what do you want me to do? Hua slowly opened her eyes, and then found that her jealousy radar seemed to be broken, constantly rolling around above her head. There is only her little she besides her, why is the radar sending alerts? Good morning, Hua. Yunshi said with guilt, watching his childhood sweetheart stretching herself. After a few blinks, she regained her vitality. A drop of cold sweat slowly slid down his forehead. Good morning, little she. A new day has begun. Hua smiled and stretched out her hands to the rising sun. Ah, the world is so beautiful. Although she vaguely felt that a lot of things had happened, none of them troubled her now, because her little she had come back. No matter how many mistakes he had made, she would forgive him. As long as he was by her side, she would have the courage to fight the whole world. Kaela. After waking up, Hua felt that her whole body was full of strength. Undoubtedly, she had become stronger again, not the strength she obtained after releasing the power contained in her bloodline, but the real strength belonged to her own flesh and blood. Her sky-flying bloodline was gradually being unlocked. The title of hero rank was meaningless for her, neither she needed god weapons to increase her attack power, because she herself was as strong as a god weapon that could unleash destructive forces at any time and anywhere. Very well, I'm in perfect condition. Hua only felt that she could slaughter 100 male fiery dragons now. Little she, did that poisonous snake do anything strange to you? Summoning her broken sword and tightly holding it in her hand, Hua took a deep breath. It's a pity that she didn't kill that cunning snake, Ouroboros. No, she said cautiously. Yes, he didn't do this thing and that thing with Ouroboros but Hydra. That's good. This snake is on my hunting list. Holding the blood-colored sword in her hand, a gust of air suddenly burst out of her body with an overbearing atmosphere. Like a dragon, like a storm, like a natural disaster. Ha! She brandished her sword. As a result, an airwave directly divided the sea in front of Hua and extended to the end of the horizon. The strong airflow caused by the sword was perfectly confined within an area of about 10 meters, as if someone was drawing a line on the sea. The sword divided the sea. It represented that Hua's control of her strength went a step further. She gazed at his childhood sweetheart. The more he knew about her, the more he could understand how exaggerated her talent was. Even in night novels, the protagonists wouldn't be as strong as her. Little she, I become stronger. Apparently, Hua was in a good mood. Her little she was beside her, and his eyes were full of longing as usual. Yeah, she liked his simple and straightforward look, she liked his eyes, which were so pure that couldn't hide anything. It was just that her jealousy radar was a little strange today. It had been spinning around above her head since before she awoke. What's the matter? There were only she and herself here, why was it sending alerts? Congratulations, Hua, why don't you enter the hero rank? She looked at his young childhood sweetheart with some doubts. Unlike him, Hua's battle power had long surpassed the hero rank. He didn't think that there would be any hero-ranked beings who could hurt Ouroboros, a legend-ranked fantastic creature. It's still not the time, but it should be soon. Hua shook her head. She couldn't explain it to her little she. There were too many taboos in the sky-flying bloodline. Well, come and eat bread. She reached out his hand and a piece of fragrant, soft golden bread appeared in his palm. Ha ha, you're already a hero-ranked baker now, you entered the hero rank faster than me. My little she is the best baker. Hua graciously took away she's special golden bread, which was her favorite. In order to gain the privilege of monopolizing this bread, she fought with she's other childhood sweethearts and finally defeated them by relying on the strength of her bloodline. For her, she's bread had that value. But, even after entering the hero rank, a baker's battle power is still 0. She was satisfied with his career level, but he was not proud of it. Compared with Hua, Red Lotus and White Lotus, his hero rank as a baker was really not worth mentioning. Don't say that, even 100 hero-ranked swordsmen can't make a piece of delicious bread. From this point, you are more useful than 100 hero-ranked swordsmen. Hua said with great certainty. Even in all the White Lotus sword domain, there was probably only one hero-ranked baker, Shi. Only large gods domains with a large number of people and a highly developed civilization could there be such hero-ranked careers which were unrelated to battles. Their value was far beyond common hero-ranked battle careers. The hero rank had exceeded the limit of flesh and blood. The medicine that could cure mortals could be of no use to hero-ranked beings. Only hero-ranked divine spells and magic could cure a hero-ranked being's body, but these spells and magic were very rare and hard to learn. In this way, the hero-ranked golden bread made by she was very valuable. It was easy to carry and could cure almost all the ranked beings of all races. At the critical moment, it could be a trump card to save the owner's life. Why don't you come and eat it too? After eating half of the golden bread, Hua blushed. She's golden bread had become more and more delicious recently, she almost couldn't control her appetite. No, a lady shouldn't eat so much. Well. Looking at the white butter left on the corners of Hua's mouth, his face warmed up slightly. He unconsciously picked up the bread and bit it lightly. Suddenly, both of them were stunned and blushed involuntarily. It's like indirect kissing. Was Hua being intentional? When they were still kids, they often shared delicious bread in this way. Because of this, they didn't immediately realize that it had already become a little strange after they grew up. Until now, Hua unconsciously put the bread she had eaten on Yunshi's mouth again, and both of them had white marks of white butter on their lips. The accelerated heartbeat told the couple that something was different from the past, which proved that they had grown up. A week after returning from Hydra's world, behind Yunshi, there were 3 puppies following him in a line. This had become a unique scene in the girls' dorm of the Starwing Knights. Good morning, Mai. Good morning, Star Thunder, Starfire, Star Snow. The girls who met them would laugh and greet Yunshi, as well as the 3 puppies. However, unlike when they first arrived at the Sword Palace, there was something more in the eyes of all the girls. It's better to call it enthusiasm or desire. In this maiden garden, Yunshi felt that he was like a grey wolf lurking in a flock of sheep or a fox hid in a herd of rabbits. These sheep and rabbits weren't wary of him and even wanted to approach him. No. Young girls should be more careful. Don't be so defenseless. Breakfast. Ling Ling, I'm telling you. Why do you rush to the table still wearing your nightclothes? Don't behave as if you have been starved for 300 years. Didn't you notice that everyone's eyes changed when they looked at you? The dignity of the Starwing Knights was all gone. Ling Ling. Etiquette. Have you forgotten everything I taught you? Fortunately, the mind of the secretary of the Starwing Knights was still normal. Mai Lan scolded Ling Ling with a serious look. I'm hungry. Shaking her big boobs, Ling Ling ran to Yunshi with a look of food is the most important thing. Bread, I need bread. Bread, hey, I'm here. Yunshi showed a helpless look and took out a loaf of bread. Mai, you can't spoil Ling Ling. Watching Yunshi take out the fragrant bread, Mai Lan was desperate. Why can Ling Ling, that useless person, always get Mai's bread so easily? Ahu. Ling Ling picked Yunshi's bread like a puppy, sat back in her seat, and swallowed the bread quickly. Without Mai's bread, a new day will not begin. Anyway, I can't get married after sleeping with Mai, so I don't mind being fed by Mai. This was Ling Ling's simple philosophy. As for the affairs of the Starwing Knights, just let Mai Lan do them. I only need to enjoy my life. Mai Lan, I'll give you one too. Looking at Mai Lan's hurt expression, Yunshi had to take out another loaf of bread and handed it over to Mai Lan. Sigh, when had his relationship with them become so strange? Thank you. Compared with Ling Ling, Mai Lan still had common sense and etiquette. She would absolutely not eat other people's food and regard it as a matter of course. Unless it was between husband and wife, even the best of friends shouldn't be so intimate. How shameless, Ling Ling. You are a lady of a great noble family. Have you forgotten the etiquette of the upper class? Hurrah! Just as Mai Lan stared at Ling Ling and held her bread tightly, in case that Ling Ling snatched at her bread, they heard a lazy voice. Before Mai Lan realized it, 1/3 of her bread had strangely disappeared. Woo! Millimeter, like a hamster whose cheeks were stuffed with food, Xiao Cao, the deputy leader of the Starwing Knights, were leaning on Mai Lan's shoulder and chewed the bread in her mouth. Deputy leader. Mai Lan looked at the remaining bread in her hand with tears in her eyes. She was ready to enjoy the bread slowly with black tea. How could she eat the bread now? Yummy. Xiao Cao patted Mai Lan on the shoulder with an innocent look. Other members of the Starwing Knights watched them with a look of envy. I want to eat Mai's bread, too. I've tasted it once. It's so delicious. Mai Lan is really a good person. Unfortunately, Mai can only make several loaves of bread per day. What a pity. I really envy Ling Ling. I also want to eat Mai's bread every day. Well, that's it. Now in the Starwing Knights, the ownership of Mai's bread had become a symbol of identity, and even a series of hidden rules had emerged. Only the top 10 members of the Starwing Knights could enjoy Yunshi's special butter bread, while the rest could only eat Yunshi's mass-produced white bread. Lulu was an exception. Although she wasn't one of the top 10 members, because she was the only hero-ranked pharmacist and because of a very special reason, she could also eat Mai's special butter bread every day. In order to eat Mai's butter bread, the girls of the Starwing Knights were practicing themselves hard every day, trying their best to get into the top 10 list. Well, it could be regarded as a unique view of the Starwing Knights. Mai, don't you continue practicing your closed-mouth zen? After enjoying the morning feeding time, Ling Ling looked at Yunshi curiously and asked that damn question again. No, stop asking. Even after a week, Yunshi still felt a headache once he remembered what his body did when he was practicing so-called closed-mouth zen. Ling Ling and Mai Lan in front of him were all victims of the closed-mouth zen period. On the list of victims, there were also Hua Yu, Lulu, White Lotus, and Red Lotus. The Sequelae had not disappeared yet. Ling Ling's expression when she looked at him was the best proof, which always reminded Yunshi of what he had done to her and what mistakes he had made. Woo, I really didn't mean to do that. Give me a break. Ling Ling, don't make a fool of yourself. Mai Lan stood up and secretly took a glance at Yunshi. There was also a trace of confusion in her eyes. Don't you need to sleep with me now, Mai? Being stared at by Ling Ling and Mai Lan, Yunshi really wanted to find a hole to hide in to avoid embarrassment. Damn it, that's not what he did. Why are bad rumors about him spreading amongst the girls of the Starwing Knights? The rumors said that he would force the girls he liked to sleep with him, and use butter bread as hush money. He was just practicing his skill of making bread recently. Because he didn't want to waste food, so he gave Ling Ling, Mai Lan, and Xiao Cao the bread he made. Isn't it natural for a baker to practice his skill of making bread? He also wanted to make sufficient golden butter bread to satisfy all girls of the Starwing Knights, but he couldn't do that at all. Making bread from the void was actually consuming his vitality. In the water god's world, his limit was to make 100 loaves of bread per day, but that would overdraft his physical strength. It wasn't a normal state. After coming to the Sword Palace, he only made a dozen golden butter bread per day. If he made more, his mental strength would be affected. If he puts on the White Emperor's mask, he could also make 100 loaves of butter bread per day, but after doing this, he wouldn't have any strength to move even a finger. Alas, looking at the silent Yunshi, Mai Lan's eyes were somewhat melancholy. With a cup of black tea, she nibbled her bread bit by bit. After becoming the secretary of the Starwing Knights, her temperament had been distinctly sublimated. Now, no one could see from her appearance that she was just an ordinary girl from a common family. As the representative of the civilian girls of the Starwing Knights, her temperament was more and more like a girl of the nobility. Mai's handmade bread is incredible magic. There's a big secret in Mai's skirt. As long as you get Mai's favor, you will find a different world. Rumors like these had spread in the girls' dorm over and over again. After lies had been repeated 1,000 times, even the liars would think that they were the truth, let alone that these rumors were mixed with parts of the truth. Yunshi's bread was indeed not a common bread. They were hero-ranked golden butter bread, which could whiten and nourish the eater's skin, increasing their charm. With such immediate results, it was natural that there were so many strange rumors. Probably only Yunshi himself hadn't noticed that the lucky black hair had become a tale of the White Lotus Sword Palace. The application of joining the Starwing Knights had swamped Mai Lan's desk, and the number is still increasing. It's time to go to the classroom. Noticing that more and more eyes were staring at him with a burning desire, Yunshi ran away in confusion. Hua, it's all your fault. Passing through the room of the leader of the Starwing Knights, Yunshi tacitly threw a loaf of bread into the window which was specially opened for him. A holy beetle flew by, held the golden butter bread and flew to its master. Oh, it's today's bread. Hua Yu, who had just woken up from a sweet dream, looked at the black-haired maid running past the window with a smile. Yunshi ran quickly through the woods and past Lulu's medicinal garden. He skillfully took out a loaf of bread, threw it into the air with a perfect arc. The lovely little rabbit jumped into the air and grabbed Yunshi's bread happily with the cradle in her hand, then fell to the ground with her cute rabbit ears shivered in the air. Lulu, come to class quickly. The tutor said you missed too many classes. Yunshi trotted all the way through Lulu's medicinal garden. Well, I'll be right here. Despite that, Yunshi knew that she probably wouldn't come out of the medicinal garden today. It seemed that the herbs she cultivated had reached an important stage recently. She spent almost all day in this small medicinal garden. As for the course of the Sword Palace, even Lulu's tutor wasn't a hero-ranked pharmacist. Even if she went to the class, the tutor wasn't qualified to teach her. Running through the medicinal garden where Lulu was, Yunshi hesitated for a moment. Looking at the ancient palace in front of him, he took out 2 loaves of golden butter bread and threw them to the palace. Ah! A white light flashed and the 2 loaves of bread disappeared in the air. As for who took the bread away, that was Yunshi's secret with someone. Well, the food has been good lately. Red Lotus was satisfied with the taste of the bread. Yes, it's not bad to have a maid. White Lotus smiled and enjoyed the breakfast time with her sister. She did not mention that name tacitly. The Starwing Knights. It's really a good organization. After eliminating the prejudice against someone, Red Lotus actually appreciated the Starwing Knights. First of all, its greatest advantage was that its members were all females. Moreover, its leader and deputy leader were geniuses. They could certainly enter the hero rank as long as they wanted to. As one of the true masters of the White Lotus sword domain, Red Lotus didn't mind having as many female knights as possible. Finally, it's Hua. After delivering the bread all the way, Yunshi let out a sigh of relief. Since when did he start to deliver his bread directly? 1, 2, 3. After counting his stock, Yunshi took out 3 of the best golden butter bread. This was a morning gift for his childhood sweetheart, a habit formed not long ago after they came back from the water god's world. Well, it's done. After sending out all the bread, Yunshi let out a sigh of relief and began to look forward to today's course after eating a loaf of bread. The history of sky swords was a course that Yunshi had been waiting for, because today's course was going to introduce his teacher, Cassina, to the students. As Cassina's disciple, it was absolutely necessary to choose this course. Yunshi would like to know what great achievements his teacher had made in the Sky Sword God's domain and how famous her title, the Battle God, was. In the mortal world, it was hard to know this kind of knowledge. Sky swords normally only appeared in fairy tale stories. For mortals, the legend rank was such a remote existence. Only in places like the White Lotus Sword Palace could there be correct knowledge about the legend ranks for people to learn. Just like Yunshi, there were many members of the Starwing Knights who were interested in Cassina, the Battle God. At a glance, almost half of the members of the Starwing Knights had arrived at the class. Ling Ling, Mai Lan, Xiao Cao, apart from Hua Yu and Lulu, almost all of the top 10 of the Starwing Knights were in the classroom. However, to Yunshi's surprise, they seemed to be in a strange state of excitement. These girls formed a circle, looked at something and exclaimed, "This is amazing. I never expected, there's something like that. Hey, let me see it again. Is there anything over there?" Yunshi looked at the girls and wondered what attracted so much attention. "Don't you know what happened, Mai?" Suddenly, he heard Hua Yu's voice. "Who are you? Has anything happened recently?" Yunshi really knew nothing about the things among these girls. This is not a major event in our Sword Palace, but a major event that shocked the endless gods' domains. Hua Yu patted Yunshi on the shoulder, then sat skillfully beside him and took out a crystal ball shrouded in mist from her arms. "Ah, Leader Hua Yu has also ordered the goods. Oh, this one looks more advanced than the one over there. Really, this is a limited edition crystal ball. Not only pictures, but it can also save sound into it. It must be made by a famous alchemist." When Hua Yu took out the crystal ball, all the members of the Starwing Knights ran to her and looked longingly at their leader. "Why? Is this crystal ball such a precious work of art? Even so, isn't their reaction a little too exaggerated?" Looking at them, Yunshi expressed his ignorance. "Of course, my crystal ball is the best. It was a treasure made by someone on the spot at that time, not a cheap duplicate." Hua Yu held up the crystal ball in her hand with restraint and pride. This is an authentic, unique recording crystal ball. Yeah. I love you, leader. We can finally hear the real original version this time. Be quick, be quick. Play it. My heart has begun to beat faster. No matter how many times I listen to it, it can always touch my heart. Almost all the people in the classroom started to gather around Who Are You and look at the crystal ball in her palm with expectations. Why do I have such a bad feeling? She looked at the crystal ball, and soon his ominous presentiment came true. Well, let's get started. Who Are You's fingertip touched the center of the crystal ball and toggled a switch. Inside the crystal ball, it suddenly became dark. Start. Wow. The texture of the darkness is different. It's coming soon. The girls stared at the center of the crystal ball, while she was stunned. This is. After the darkness, it was light and the girl who appeared on the stage. The girl wore a pure white dress and a pair of fantastic crystal shoes, smiling at the world. That smile and that pure and flawless temperament captured the hearts of all the girls around. Why does this appear in the White Lotus Sword domain? She was stupefied by the scene in the crystal ball. Can you feel it? How beautiful and ugly the world is. It's there, so beautiful, so broad, as if it can breathe. I'll reach out my hands and try to catch it, but I can't touch it. I came to this world, observed it, understood it, and loved it. Like the people in the Mechanus God's domain, the girls of the White Lotus Sword Palace could also feel the power contained in the song. The girls' singing transcended the limits of time and space, echoing in one god's domain after another through devices like the crystal ball in Who Are You's palms. The name Qian instantly spread throughout the endless gods' domains, and even many gods praised the singing of the girl. Punishment. This must be punishment. Why? The White Lotus Sword domain was 10,000s of light-years away from the Mechanus God's domain. Why do the people here also know about it? No matter how many times I listen to the song, the voice is beautiful. This singer really saved the world. My heart is melting. The crystal ball made by the alchemist on the spot is indeed the closest to the original version. I really want to know how the people who heard the song in the Mechanus God's domain felt. Oh, if Qian stages a concert again, I will go there at all cost. Sorry, I'm sorry. There won't be another concert anymore. Looking at the figure in the crystal ball, she was so embarrassed that he only hoped to return to the past and erase this damn scene completely. Who was the alchemist? Who is this genius that recorded the concert and sold it all over the endless gods' domains, even including the White Lotus Sword domain? I have died in the past. Who will know my name and life story? I was lost in the unknown. Who will know my place? My heart has gone to nirvana. Who can seek for its trace? My disappearance is already doomed, but I shall never stop. The disaster hasn't been ended, and will last forever in eternity. My fear, my tears, and my heart is empty. I am nothing, I am void, I am ash, I am desolation. The gods have died, the twilight is coming. As the light is still shining on the ground, I return from eternity. Codename, Alpha, the supreme god of the Mechanus God's domain. When Alpha appeared, the girls around Who Are You were all shocked. They watched the silver-haired god's appearance and listened to her affecting song, but couldn't find any appropriate words to describe their feelings. The alchemist's crystal ball perfectly sealed the god's voice inside it, and anyone who heard the song could feel the charm it contained. This crystal ball is so perfect. The song sealed in other duplicates is also good, but they can't be compared with the original version. No matter how many times I listened to it, I couldn't feel bored. It's amazing. That god named Alpha is also very powerful. Most devices of the Mechanus God's domain will lose efficacy after being taken into other gods' domains, but she created this crystal ball by combining the power of magic and science to spread Qian's singing. I never expected that someone could sing such a miraculous song. When I first heard it, my whole body couldn't stop trembling. I'm sorry, it was used to save the world, so it's really not a normal song. Yoon-shi helplessly looked at the girls who were still intoxicated from the song. When he stepped onto the stage, he never expected that this scene would be recorded and spread all over the Endless Gods domains. But it wasn't his fault. He just accidentally entered the Mechanus God's domain. He was a quantum ghost. After singing the song, Alpha's figure appeared again. Her eyes seemed to cross the endless stars, staring at the faraway void. "I'll find you. Wherever you are." The two short sentences represented the determination of a supreme god. The creations of the Mechanus God's domain can't work outside the Mechanus God's domain was originally an iron law of that domain, but now, Alpha's god power had changed it. The mass-produced crystal balls were made by Alpha. They were the crystallization of wisdom, science, and mystery. Alpha manufactured thousands of crystal balls and used her god power to seal Qian's singing into them. After that, she also made millions of duplicates by inputting the song into cheaper crystal balls. Of course, the quality of the sound would slightly reduce in these cheaper crystal balls, and sold them to the Endless Gods domains. Anyone who heard the song would be attracted and buy one. As a result, the Mechanus God's domain had received innumerable additional orders. Even with all the alchemists in that domain starting to make crystal balls from dawn to dusk, they would need 3 years to complete all the additional orders. The crystal balls that held the recorded Song of Qian's had become the largest foreign trade order of the entire Mechanus God's domain. It also made more people know Alpha's name, not limited only to the people who paid attention to Stargo. The Mechanus God's domain always maintained a semi-closed state in the past. Now, because the birth of their supreme god, Cyber-Elf Alpha, the entire God's domain began to enter a new era. These crystal balls spread from the Mechanus God's domain were the opportunities for change brought by Alpha. Of course, she didn't care at all about it. She made these crystal balls just for a simple reason. She wanted to find Qian, in other words, the master of Stargo. As for why the crystal balls used to find Qian eventually became the most popular products in the Endless Gods domains, it was just an accident that even Alpha herself didn't expect. At first, she sent out the crystal balls for free, but soon, the Mechanus God's domain received a bunch of invitations from other gods, all of which were about the trade requirements of these crystal balls that recorded the singing of Qian. In this way, the crystal balls became a kind of super-hot product. The scene happened in this classroom had appeared everywhere in the Endless Gods domains countless times. "No. I'm done." After discovering the origin and development of these crystal balls, Yoon-shi could only sigh with regret. Even in this remote White Lotus Sword domain, people could buy the crystal balls that recorded Qian's singing. It was too shameful. When he imagined how many people had bought and watched the crystal balls, Yoon-shi only wanted to cry. "Alpha, you're going to make me die. Woo. My, don't you think this girl named Qian is somewhat similar to you?" Who are you said and looked at the figure in the crystal ball with a smile on her lips. If it wasn't for this reason, she wouldn't have bought this limited edition crystal ball. 2012 was the serial number for this crystal ball, representing that it was the 2012 limited edition made by alchemists. Now collecting these numbered crystal balls had become a fashion in the Endless Gods domains. It was said that even some gods were looking for them. This was the charm of Qian and the miracle created by the 3 water gods' priestesses. "No, not at all." Yoon-shi resolutely denied Hua Yu's question. "The girl in the crystal ball has nothing to do with me. Let this black history forever be a black history. The truth should be buried in history forever." Sometimes, the more resolutely you deny a thing, the easier the thing would be noticed. After Hua Yu said it, the girls around her also found out about this. "Really? Mai looks like Qian. They look like sisters. Mai is the older sister and Qian is the young sister. One is a singer in the Mechanus God's domain, and the other is a disciple of the Sword Palace. What an incredible coincidence. I've heard that there will always be 10 people who look like you in the world." "That's true." The girls chattered around Yoon-shi excitedly. "I can't sing that kind of song." Yoon-shi shook his head and presented the best evidence for himself. "It's not a lie. This Qian is not him, but a quantum ghost in a dream. In the real world, he didn't have that voice. Oh, it's true, that kind of singing is amazing. I really want to know how Qian has such a wonderful voice. My, do you want to be a singer, too? The girls of the Starwing Knights looked with interest at Yunxi. No. Yunxi firmly refused this proposal. Are you kidding me? What kind of punishment is this? I don't want to experience this anymore. It's a pity. I think Mai could be a singer too. Well, I think so too. Mai, you must look beautiful in a white dress. The girls laughed and joked with Yunxi, which made Yunxi have an inexplicable sense of sadness. Before I practiced the closed-mouth Zen, before the days I went to the Starry Sky chessboard, they didn't behave like this. After returning from the Starry Sky chessboard, everyone's attitude towards him changed, as if they suddenly became more intimate. Now, they all took the initiative to get close to him, pulling his hand, and leaning their bodies over him. As for the invitation to take a bath together, Yunxi had refused them hundreds of times. And why do girls like to go to the toilet collectively? Why can girls stay in it for 15 minutes? What's more, why do you dress so exposed and casual in the girls' dorm? Shouldn't girls be more reserved? Why can I always pick up unknown panties near the door of my room? Why can girls hold each other's hands and nestle close to each other so easily? Do you know how hard I have to restrain my desire? If Mai doesn't like it, we shouldn't force her. Eventually, Hua Yu came out and rescued Yunxi. As the head of the Starwing Knights, Hua Yu was much more dignified than Yunxi. I want to drop out of the Sword Palace. Yunxi's eyes became dull and listless. Hua, it's all your fault. In this way, sooner or later, I will be unable to restrain my desire. Like a big grey wolf in a flock of sheep, he doubted how long he could keep pretending. Especially after accepting Teacher Cassina's seed of the battle god, his vitality was increasing day by day, which was like adding fuel to the fire in this situation. Cough. As Yunxi was desperately thinking about how to suppress his own impulse, the history teacher finally walked into the classroom. Today, I will talk about the history of Cassina, the battle god, the sixth sky sword. But before that, I will introduce a transfer student to you. Transfer student. At this time, Yunxi looked at the pale-haired history teacher with some surprise. The transfer student is from the Heaven's Road Palace. She is one of the best students in the Heaven's Road Palace. The history teacher said proudly. The Heaven's Road Palace and the Sword Palace were equally famous in the Eastern God's domain. The creed of the Heaven's Road Palace was unification of all rules. The history of the Heaven's Road Palace was even longer than the Sword Palace. The Sky Sword God's domain was a god's domain with sword as its veneration. Even so, the influence of the Heaven's Road Palace wasn't inferior to the Sword Palace in the Sky Sword God's domain. From the scope of the entire Eastern God's domain, the influence of the Heaven's Road Palace was even higher than the Sword Palace. The disciples of the Heaven's Road Palace were hundreds of times more than the disciples of the Sword Palace. As one of the best disciples of the Heaven's Road Palace, no matter who the transfer student is, she is indeed qualified to be a transfer student of the Sword Palace. Come on, Robin. The history teacher looked outside the door. He didn't know why this genius of the Heaven's Road Palace suddenly visited the White Lotus Sword Palace and wanted to be a transfer student, but from the attitude of the twin witches towards her, she must be an extraordinary genius. Oh, probably she came for the White Lotus secret treasure, he thought. Dressed in a bright red cloak, a girl Yunxi felt very familiar with walked up to the podium and then stared at Yunxi and the girls of the Starwing Knights. Who are you, the leader of the Starwing Knights? Xiao Cao, the deputy leader of the Starwing Knights. Except for the little rabbit, the people who appeared in her prophecy were all here. Oh, let me see if the future I choose can come true. My name is Robin, a transfer student from the Heaven's Road Palace. I'm good at divination. No matter what you want to divine, I can divine for you. I came here because I saw the future. Oh, it's her. Yunxi soon recalled who she was. She was the first augur he met, and her divination was very accurate. So, she was a disciple of the Heaven's Road Palace. Future. Does that mean fate? I heard that most augurs wouldn't divine their own future. All the girls in the classroom looked curiously at Robin. She was one of the best disciples of the Heaven's Road Palace. In some sense, this identity was even higher than the princess of the Great Shia Empire. There was no doubt that Robin was a strong hero-ranked augur. Robin, whose real identity was one of the top 10 assassins of the 10 Leaves Alliance, smiled at the girls under the podium. Here she is. She hesitated for a long time and once thought about giving up, but finally, she chose to take a punt. For common augurs, divination of their own fate was a taboo, but for her who had long been entangled in the blood curse, common sense had long been meaningless. Divination of their own destiny would extract the augur's lifetime. Countless augurs died for violating this rule. Nevertheless, she had died long ago. From the moment she lost herself in the nightmare world and met the Robins, she was no longer a living person. That is to say, her life had been exhausted many years ago. In this case, she had nothing to lose. Even if she didn't do anything, being entangled by Robins, her mind would keep approaching the nightmare world, so it's better to make good use of this power to peep into the infinite future. This was probably her strongest and only extraordinary power after leaving the nightmare world. As an assassin, she wasn't good at killing at all. Every time, she just went quietly to her targets and witnessed the process of their death. The one she watched was the one who was doomed to die. At this moment, she was looking at the corner of the crowd, the black-haired maid. Her eyes were gentle and cruel, with expectation and uneasiness. There was the future she saw. Crack. With a sound in his heart, She had a vaguely bad feeling. My future, right here. Slowly she stepped down from the podium. Robin walked towards She step by step. Who are you? Frowned and took a step forward, but suddenly felt something, then her brow cleared and gave way to Robin. This scent, it can't be wrong. She is also one of us. You also gave her your blessings? All members of the Starwing Knights had a similar intuition to be able to detect at close range whether the other party had been blessed by My Land's desktop had been stacked high with the applications for joining the Starwing Knights, but so far only Mew Mew had been accepted as a new member of the Starwing Knights. That was because the Starwing Knights was a group of people who gathered together for a certain characteristic. Only girls who had obtained Mai's blessings could join. She looked at the bright red figure coming towards him. Today, she was also wearing the bright red cloak with a plain face. He didn't see the several blue-backed and red-breasted birds who always stood on her shoulders. Although she was standing there, he felt that she was standing in another world. Average height, average shoulder width, average chest, average cheek. If she hadn't been introduced to them by the teacher, no one would have found that such a person was standing at the door. It would have been like the world had forgotten her. All parts were plain, except for her eyes, which were gazing into She's eyes at the moment. It was a pair of deep, bottomless eyes, as if she had seen through everything. My future is right in front of me. With great courage, Robin finally appeared in front of the future she chose. Despite this, the choice seemed so incredible and disorganized, like a butterfly flying in a summer storm. However, she was still willing to believe that even with such a tragic person as herself, she still had the chance to seize her only chance for happiness. At this moment, she reached out to her future, bowed her head and prayed. Are you willing to be my lost future? She stared blankly at Robin, who was half kneeling in front of him. What's wrong with this? Yeah, is this a proposal? No, it's a confession. Are you willing to be my lost future? Oh, what a romantic confession. The moment Robin spoke her wish, the girls in the whole classroom set off an explosion of exclamation. Who are you? Looked with pity at Robin. Xiao Cao moved her hands and feet and had a feeling of eagerness to try. No. You can't jump the gun. Ling Ling stood up and put her hands on her waist. Even though she didn't say such shameful words to Mai, how could a new member be so arrogant? Ling Ling, come on. Only at this time, Mai Lan was supportive of Ling Ling Yu. Can you feel me? Robin was about to cry. After being cursed by the bloody Robins, her existence had been largely stripped from the world. Envy, concern, sympathy, and even hostility. Even feeling these negative affectivities had long become a luxury to her. Her existence was so weak that sometimes, even her teacher at the Heaven's Road Palace forgot that he had such a disciple. Ah, that's great. Sure enough, I was right to come here. The future is here. Humph, I will never let you have my... Ling Ling stood up, held Yunshi's right hand, and pressed his arm with her big breasts, declaring war on Robin on her own initiative. The future is the interweaving of different destiny trajectories. The future is a collection of time fragments. I want to find this future. Robin stood up and stared at Ling Ling without hesitation. Her eyes were sincere and calm, and a flame called hope burned deep in her pupils. The victim who falls into an endless abyss will try to grasp and hold on to any hope tightly. Robin was the victim, longing for even a ray of hope. Hey, what are you looking at? Ling Ling threw out her chest again, which made Robin have an indescribable sense of failure. The gap seems a little big. Robin looked at the girls of the Starwing Knights. Unexpectedly, she saw the same emotion in their eyes. Sometimes, the friendship between girls was so wonderful. They could become good friends just for a trivial reason. Now, Robin realized this. And because they had the same despair when facing this enemy, the flat-chested members of the Starwing Knights decided to accept Robin as one of them. We must find the demon dragon. We must find the demon dragon. We must find the demon dragon. The Dragon Blood Alliance of the Starwing Knights had a new member today. She was being noticed and watched. Even just realizing such a trivial thing had made Robin feel compulsive happiness. It made her feel like she had traveled back to the mortal world, not a ghost floating around in an isolated corner of the world. Thank you, thank you for giving me your blessing, Robin said and stretched out her hand, holding Yunshi's hand. Well, Robin seemed to have forgotten something important at that time. Yunshi looked at the girl with a guilty face. When did she find it? When he planted the seed in her body, his move should have been very stealthy. Why did she seem to know everything? Who are you? Looked at them and sighed. Do you know what your blessing stands for? This is a key that can let any person enter the hero rank and even the higher ranks. If people knew that you have such a magical power, all the forces of the endless god's domain would come and contend for you at all costs. Do you really know what it means to give this blessing to us? Nobody can ever leave my now. This is probably the sweetest curse in the world for the girls of the Starwing Knights. If you want to pursue you must beat me down first. Ling Ling glared at Robin. A fool wouldn't mind who her enemy is. Well, what a powerful enemy. Robin carefully calculated the difference between her and Ling Ling and came to a rather sad conclusion. In terms of femininity, there was a big gap between her and Ling Ling. However, I still have chances. After all, I have a special weapon. Why did I have such a strange idea? Robin's face slightly turned red. After returning from the endless nightmares, her life was like being covered by a layer of grey mist. In only a few moments would her life be stained with the color of blood. Now, she was literally confronting a girl of her age. Just for a few moments, she had experienced different scenarios one after another, which were what she absolutely couldn't touch in the grey mist world. Hey, my victory. Even though she was a fool, Ling Ling knew that she had won this turn. Damn, Ling Ling is still so arrogant. Why is this fool so lucky? Everything is done by my Lan. Is she also a secretary of the Starwing Knights? Ling Ling is our secretary, but what on earth has she done for us? The civilian, flat-chested, girls of the Starwing Knights glared at Ling Ling and felt the same frustration Robin was feeling. That sense of frustration was one of the reasons the civilian, flat-chested, girls formed an alliance. In order to narrow the gap, they had written countless plans to catch that damn demon dragon, and the key was the dragon plant Lulu was cultivating. Don't be too arrogant, we can also continue to grow up. We will hunt the demon dragon. This was the wings of all the civilian, flat-chested, girls. Well, it sounded like the barking of underdogs. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.